Chapter 1579. Old Goo came to the door of the room in the center of the mansion. He knocked on the door and walked in without getting a response. Guillermo stood at the door and acted as a guard. He was afraid that someone would assassinate him or spy on him during this sensitive period. After Old Goo entered the room, he saw a huge alchemy furnace that was on fire. Other than the alchemy furnace, there were some other small decorations. Old Goo walked around the alchemy furnace and saw a familiar figure behind it. The figure was wearing a purple alchemy robe and was sitting cross-legged on a futon. His eyes were closed, and all his attention was on the alchemy furnace in front of him. Old Goo sat quietly on another futon and did not disturb him. After a while, there was a rumbling sound from the alchemy furnace. The middle-aged man, wearing a purple alchemy robe, sitting on the futon, smiled and opened the lid of the alchemy furnace. Then, dozens of golden pills flew out of the furnace. When Old Man Goo saw this scene, he praised, "Io, not bad. You actually managed to refine a cauldron of perfect grade 6 pills. You've improved a lot." The middle-aged man smiled modestly and said, "Compared to you, Old Goo, I am still far behind. All right, don't flatter me. You have to figure out the way of alchemy yourself." "Okay." The middle-aged man waved his sleeve, and the dozens of perfect grade 6 pills flew into his pocket. After a moment of silence, he asked, "I heard that you have a disciple." "Yes." Old Man Goo did not hide anything. He smiled and said, "His name is Yi Hao. He is the ruler of the Tianyuan Empire. His talent in alchemy is rarely seen in his life. He can already refine perfect grade 5 mid-stage pills. I have heard of him. He is young, but he is quite capable. Of course. How can my disciple be bad?" Old Goo could not help but look proud. "But it is also because of him that we have a grudge with Song Air." The middle-aged man looked worried. Old Goo was unhappy and asked with a black face, "Sage Jean, what do you mean?" "You know that our alchemy sect has a grudge with Godbai for a long time. That incident was just a fuse. Moreover, it is because of me, not him." "Old Goo, don't be angry. I'm just saying." Jean Sheng hadn't seen the old man so angry for a long time. He panicked for a moment and said, "I know these two 6-class empires have been unhappy with us for a long time. Even if this incident didn't happen, there will be a next time. It's good that you know." Old Goo waved his sleeve and stopped talking. Sage Jean sighed and did not say anything. After a long while, Old Man Goo looked at the middle-aged man who was frowning beside him and said, "You weren't so diligent in the past. You wouldn't even be willing to refine a pill a day." Jean Sheng smiled bitterly. "Isn't that because the war is about to begin? The more Dan I concoct, the greater the chances of Alchemy House winning. What are our chances of winning?" Jean Sheng did not wish to hide anything from Old Goo. He extended 3 fingers. Old Goo looked serious. He knew that the alchemy sect was in a bad situation, but he did not expect that their chances of winning would be so low. Sage Jean got up and opened the window. He leaned against the wall and breathed in the fresh air. "Since Godbai and Song Air declared war on us, many countries have announced that they will break their alliance with us unilaterally and join the enemy camp. Not only that, but our branches in other empires have all suffered devastating attacks. At first, Song Air and the other empires only tried to recruit us. Later, when they failed, they used force to seal off all the branches. They took away all the alchemists and sealed all the elixirs in the branches. We have suffered heavy losses. Didn't we ask them to start retreating?" Old Goo came to the window and asked as he looked at the busy crowd. "Yes, they have started retreating. But how can they move all the accumulated resources of 100 years in a few months? Moreover, they did it under the eyes of others." The room fell into silence again. The alchemy sect empire was indeed at the point of life and death. The two of them could not help but look serious. After a while, Old Goo said firmly, "No, we may not lose this battle." Sage Jean tilted his head slightly. "I'll go look for allies. How can we still have allies in our current state?" "Yes." Old Goo took a deep breath and said, "I won't be in Alchemy Sect City during this period of time. I'll leave this place to you. Gather everyone here. Do not split up. Otherwise, we will be defeated one by one." "I understand." Sage Jean nodded and reminded, during this special period, you and Gu Mo must be careful. Okay, old Gu responded and started to walk out of the door. Suddenly, Sage Jean shouted at old Gu's back. Then what about Tian Yuan? Old Gu was stunned when he heard that. Then he turned his head and smiled. If our alchemy sect is defeated, Tian Yuan will be the seed of revival. Star Moon Graveyard. In a forest, under a lush tree, 3 figures appeared one after another. The first figure that appeared was covered in golden light. He stood under the tree and shook his head. He was slightly disappointed. At this moment, a figure of God appeared beside him. The figure in a white robe and holding a snow-white long sword said calmly, "How can Emperor Xingyue's cultivation method be obtained so easily?" Then, he was ready to leave. After taking 2 steps, he realized that monk Jin Guang did not follow him. He could not help but turn his head and ask, "Are you still waiting for him?" Monk Jin Guang did not say anything. However, his action of sitting cross-legged under the tree had already explained everything. The swordsman in white thought for a while and walked to the tree. He leaned against the tree and looked into the distance. Just like that, the 2 of them were quiet. After a long time, suddenly, there was a fluctuation of spiritual power under the tree. Then, a black figure appeared under the tree. That person shook his head. He leaned against the tree and kept recalling what had just happened. Just as he sat on the throne, there was an obscure aura that entered his mind. Without any explanation, he began to practice a set of finger skills called star plucking finger that was mixed in the aura. He did not appear under the tree until he finished practicing the first finger skill. Then, Yihao regained some consciousness. He saw that there were 2 people beside him. He could not help but be surprised. What a coincidence. You're here too. The swordsman in white looked at Yihao with a hint of shock in his calm eyes. He knew that Yihao could not sit on the throne with his physical strength. But now, Yihao appeared in front of him in perfect condition. This made him look at Yihao with a hint of respect. The swordsman in white turned his head and said calmly, "It's him who wants to wait for you here." Chapter 1580. Monk Jin Guang stood up and took out 5 5th-level spiritual herbs from his arms and handed them to Yihao. Yihao was a little confused. Monk Jin Guang didn't speak and threw the spiritual herbs into Yihao's arms. Then he walked to the side and silently guarded Yihao. Yihao looked at the spiritual herbs in his arms and was a little confused. But then he made up his mind and began to refine these spiritual herbs. After all, in this dangerous place, the more power he had to protect himself, the more hope he had to survive. The white-clothed swordsman glanced at the black figure who was refining the spiritual herbs. He silently went behind him and began to guard him. After an hour, the spiritual power contained in the 5 spiritual herbs was completely refined by Yihao. At the same time, Yihao's realm had reached the 7th-level spirit monarch realm. He finally had the power to fight against a 9th-level spirit monarch. But he still had to retreat when he encountered a monster like the beggar with a crutch. "Hey, only the 7th-level spirit monarch realm? I thought you would reach the 8th-level spirit monarch realm." An emotionless voice floated from behind Yihao. Yihao turned back and smiled. "Indeed, I can only break through to the 7th-level spirit monarch realm. I'm still a little bit away from the 8th level. The white-clothed swordsman responded faintly. When he walked past Yihao, he said softly, "Thank you." Yihao smiled slightly and then walked side by side with monk Jin Guang. The 3 of them walked together to the magnificent palace in the center of the forest. At this time, dozens of figures gathered at the entrance of the palace. Everyone looked at the closed golden palace door and didn't make a sound. The open space in front of the palace was surprisingly quiet. Not long after, 3 figures came to the open space, which also caused a burst of exclamations from the crowd. Among these people, there was the duo Bao San by Jun Songgu, the beggar with a crutch, and Long Yang cultivator. These people more or less had some grudges with the 3 people who just came. The 3 people who came together found an open space and sat together, ignoring the surprised eyes of the crowd. After the exclamation, the open space once again fell into silence, a kind of deathly silence. After a long time, the palace seemed to know that no one would come. Thus, 2 lines of words appeared on the palace door. The first line read, 8 people enter. The second line read, use divine abilities. Just as everyone was thinking about these 2 sentences, a huge black arena appeared under everyone's feet. Everyone looked at the black arena blankly and suddenly felt that they couldn't use their spirit force. They couldn't help but panic. Then Duo Bao-san said loudly, everyone don't panic. Although you can't use your own spiritual power, you can use the Star Moon Emperor's magical power that you just learned on the throne. The magical power mentioned on the door should mean that you can only use the magical power you just learned. You can't use anything else. It can't be, right? That's such a trap. Then what does it mean when it says 8 people enter? It can't be that only 8 people can enter, right? If only 8 people can enter, then what about the remaining people? As soon as the voice fell, the open space around the arena suddenly disappeared and was replaced by an abyss. In other words, the arena under their feet and the palace in front of them were suspended on a huge abyss. The people standing on it wouldn't be swallowed by the abyss, but if they fell, they would definitely die without a complete corpse. This is an 8th-level spirit monarch cultivator was standing on the edge of the arena, carefully probing. Suddenly, Long Yang cultivator appeared behind him and pushed him down. Ah! The cultivator's scream didn't even have time to linger in everyone's ears before his whole body was swallowed by the abyss and turned into nothingness. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. It seemed that the 8 people written on the door meant that everyone had to compete for these 8 places. Those who snatched it would live, and those who couldn't would die. Everyone's heart was filled with a strong sense of death, and the atmosphere became heavy in an instant. Bai Jun and Sango took the lead and went to Duo Bao-san. They were originally in the same camp, and then a group of people gathered around the 3 of them. The beggar with crutches and Long Yang cultivator stood together, and a group of people also gathered around them. Finally, there was Yi Hao, the white-clothed swordsman, and the golden light monk. Of course, they didn't have followers around them, because everyone present had participated in the encirclement and killing of the 2 people beside Yi Hao. What a coincidence, we meet again. Duo Bao-san looked at the 3 of them with a smile. Then he fixed his gaze on Yi Hao and said with a smile, Yi Sangao, why are you over there? Aren't you supposed to be one of my people? Come over here quickly. Thank you for your kindness, Prince Jewel, but I think it's safer here. So, please forgive me, Prince Jewel. Yi Hao replied indifferently. Duo Bao-san's face darkened and said angrily, Yi Sangao, don't be so shameless. Bang! Yi Hao pointed his finger, and a cultivator in the 8th level of the Spirit Emperor realm, who belonged to Duo Bao-san's camp, who wanted to attack them, died in an instant. Boy, it seems that the cultivation method you have comprehended is not simple. Can you lend it to me for advice? Long Yang cultivator laughed. Yi Hao sneered and pointed his finger. Long Yang cultivator hurriedly pulled a person beside him to block the sharp attack, and then patted his chest with lingering fear. Now, none of us can use spiritual power, so we can only use the cultivation method we have comprehended to fight. It can be considered a battle of the same level. Do you think I will be afraid of you in a battle of the same level? Yi Hao laughed, and then the spiritual power in his body circulated. Everyone turned pale with fright. Only the beggar with crutches, the white-clothed swordsman, and the golden light monk looked calm. The beggar with crutches already knew that Yi Hao had the power of stars, so the rules here were useless to him. How could the checkpoints set by the Star Moon Emperor restrict people with the power of stars? As for the white-clothed swordsman and the golden light monk, Yi Hao was not a threat to them, so they naturally did not need to worry. Duo Bao-san and Long Yang cultivator were shocked. This was not good news for them. In a situation where everyone could not use spiritual power, but Yi Hao could, then wouldn't they be at the mercy of Yi Hao? The leaders of the 2 groups exchanged glances at the same time and reached a second consensus. The first consensus was to attack the top 2 on the heaven list, and this time to attack the people around them. Boss, no. Why? Why are you attacking us? No, I will fight with you. I want to die with you. For a moment, wails and screams were endless. Yi Hao, with his silver-white skin, slowly walked out. Looking at the 5 people who were wantonly slaughtering his own people, he sneered and said, "You are indeed someone who is going to achieve great things. At the critical moment, you can actually attack your own people. You want to gather 8 people as soon as possible to pass this checkpoint. Good calculation. But what you have given me before, I will return it to you in this checkpoint." Chapter 1581. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Hao's spiritual power circulated in his palm, and he slapped toward Cultivator Long Yang. Cultivator Long Yang didn't expect Yi Hao to be so fast. He crossed his arms and resisted Yi Hao's attack. When he retreated to the edge of the arena, he felt something sweet in his throat and spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, a silver-white palm print came straight at him. Cultivator Long Yang didn't have time to react, and a silver-white palm print also whizzed out. Bang! At the moment when the palm print collided, Cultivator Long Yang quickly moved away from the edge of the arena. After all, he didn't want to be swallowed by the abyss. Cultivator Long Yang stood still and looked at Monk Jingguang, who withdrew his fist and palm. He roared and rushed toward Monk Jingguang like an arrow. Monk Jingguang was expressionless. He raised his fists and rushed forward. The two collided. The white-clothed swordsman looked at the unsheathed snow-white sword in his hand and pointed it at the duo Baosan. The duo Baosan, who was fighting, felt something. After throwing one person into the abyss, they suddenly turned around and looked at the expressionless white-clothed swordsman. With a chuckle, the two moved at the same time. What he used were the divine abilities he had obtained from the throne. On the other side, Yi Hao, who was full of spiritual power, sent one person flying with a palm. He was like a wolf in a flock of sheep. Wherever he passed, people hurriedly retreated. No one was his opponent. Seeing Yi Hao coming straight at him, the beggar with the crutch was a little flustered and hurriedly took 2 steps back. Yi Hao sneered and said, "You weren't like this when we were in the herb garden. Little beggar, where are you going?" The beggar with the crutch pushed the 2 people next to him forward and directly faced the 2 magical powers from Yi Hao's fingers. Bang bang. Although the 2 were 8th-level spirit monarchs, they couldn't even take one move from Yi Hao in this space. "Yi Sangao, don't be so arrogant. We'll fight you. You just change your skin. That's right. What's the big deal? See how we beat you down into the abyss." After that, 6 or 7 9th-level spirit monarchs all stood up. They thought that instead of being beaten down into the abyss by the beggar with the crutches, they would join forces to beat Yi Hao. This way, their chances of survival would be higher. "Bring it on." Yi Hao's finger, provocatively. Everyone was furious. "Yang." Yi Hao looked at the overwhelming attacks and laughed. "You can only use the Star Moon Emperor's magical power, right? In that case, try this move." The silver sword flew up and down in Yi Hao's hand. Then, countless silver swords appeared behind Yi Hao. Yi Hao took a deep breath and felt that it was about time. He drew a sword flower with his right hand and threw out the silver sword in his hand. When the silver-white long sword shot out, the countless long swords behind Yi Hao moved as well. They all followed behind that long sword. Those silver-white swords were like shooting stars as they collided with the overwhelming attacks, creating a series of rumbling sounds. Before the outcome of the battle in midair could be determined, a silver-white figure appeared behind them. The figure shouted angrily, "Star-plucking hand!" The sky suddenly turned dark. Everyone looked up and saw a palm shining with silver light descending from the sky. In the next second, everything returned to normal. Now, there was only Yi Hao in the place where they stood just now. Yi Hao smiled and looked at the beggar who was leaning on crutches. The beggar with crutches asked cautiously, "Who are you? How can you cultivate the power of stars and know so many magical powers?" Yi Hao chuckled and said, "I comprehended these magical powers from a throne. Impossible, I've only comprehended 2 types, but from your performance just now, you've clearly comprehended 3 types. How could you possibly comprehend so many great divine abilities? A monster like you isn't even on the heaven list. It's nothing for a genius like me to comprehend 3 magical powers. The beggar with crutches sneered and said, "You believe in the heaven list? Why can't I believe it? Because I made it up." The beggar with crutches could not hide his pride. No wonder. Yihao's lips moved and said, "No wonder your name isn't on the list. You did it on purpose." "I have another question." Yihao continued asking. "I saw your cultivation. You, Monk Golden Light, Duo Bao San, and the white-clothed swordsman. The 4 of you are not from the ancient demon region, right?" The beggar with crutches looked at the few people left and was secretly happy. He replied, "Half right." Yihao casually glanced at the few people left and said indifferently, "Then tell me. Monk Golden Light, the white-clothed swordsman, and Duo Bao San are indeed not from the ancient demon region. They are from the desolate ancient world." Desolate ancient world? Yihao had expected this, so he was not surprised. He smiled and said, "What about you?" "Me?" The beggar with crutches sneered. "Why should I tell you?" Bang! Before his voice died away, Yihao used the stellar transposition to appear in front of the beggar with crutches. He punched the beggar's black crutches. Even though the beggar's cultivation was unfathomable, it could not help him block Yihao's attack. So he retreated dozens of steps before he could stabilize himself. "Hey, what are you?" Before he could finish his words, Yihao rushed over again. The beggar was flustered and hurried to meet the enemy. Unfortunately, he could only be beaten by Yihao. Yihao kicked the beggar's abdomen. The beggar fell to the ground and flew away. Then, Yihao suddenly appeared behind the beggar and stepped on his back. He pressed him to the ground and said coldly, "If you don't speak, die." Cough, cough. The beggar coughed and smiled. "If I speak, will I not die?" Yihao said without hesitation, "Of course. If you speak, you won't die." At the same time, he thought to himself, "It doesn't matter. Even if I don't die, I will cripple you. I will destroy your cultivation. I told you, I will pay you back double for what you gave me." All right. The beggar looked at the situation. There were more than 10 people left. He believed that before there were only 8 left, he would die in Yihao's hands. So he said helplessly, "I am not from the desolate ancient world. I am from the ancient demon region." Ancient demon region? Which empire? "I am from the ancient demon region, the everlasting dynasty." What? Yihao was stunned. He increased the strength of his foot and shouted, "What everlasting dynasty? I have never heard of it. Are you lying to me?" Chapter 1582. Everlasting Holy Dynasty? Yihao was confused. What kind of power was that? Why hadn't he heard of it in the ancient demon area? The beggar smiled and said, "I'm different from them. They're from the ancient desolate world and are considered outsiders. I'm from the ancient demon area. We're a family. A family should be united against outsiders." "A family?" Yihao smiled and said, "You're a family and you're still chasing me? You want to interrogate me?" Misunderstanding, misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. What kind of power is this everlasting holy dynasty? Why haven't I heard of it? Thinking of this, the beggar became interested and said, "You don't know about this. You only know that the most powerful empire in the ancient demon realm is the 6th rank empire. But you don't know that there is a world above the 6th rank empire. Not only does that world have the various sacred dynasties, but it is also the path to the desolate world. And I'm from that world. According to our language, this place is called the lower ancient demon area. You're just a bunch of bump. Ouch. Speak properly." He hadn't hold back and stepped on the beggar's body, causing him to cry out in pain. At this time, after Bai Jun and Songo's efforts, there were only 8 people left in the arena. Apart from them, there was Yihao and the beggar who was being stepped on by Yihao, as well as Monk Jingguang, the white-robed swordsman, the duo Bao San, and cultivator Long Yang who were fighting in the distance. Just as the 4 of them were fighting fiercely, the arena under their feet suddenly disappeared. The remaining 8 people were shocked. They quickly separated and looked at the abyss under their feet. After making sure they wouldn't fall, they relaxed. Then, the 8 of them separated into 3 groups. The 8 of them looked up at the huge palace, not far away, and slowly walked towards it. They stood at the entrance of the palace and gently pushed the golden door that couldn't be opened no matter what suddenly opened. It was pitch black as far as the eye could see. Yiha didn't hesitate and stepped in. The white-robed swordsman, monk Jin Guang, and the others followed. After the 8 of them entered the palace, the golden door behind them quietly closed. Then, the 8 of them suddenly felt that they had lost their footing and they couldn't help but fall. Falling all the way. After an unknown period of time, a few loud thuds were heard. Everyone finally realized that their feet were on the ground, and the state of floating and not knowing when they could land finally disappeared. When everyone fell to the ground one after another, many silvery white lights lit up around them. Only then did everyone begin to carefully examine their surroundings. They discovered that there were no exits around the walls, and right in front of them was a coffin. On top of the coffin was a stack of scrolls. What is this place? The more Dragon's Son vagabond looked at this place, the stranger he felt it was. It gave him a gloomy feeling. Bai Jun carefully sized up the surroundings and said, "This place can't be the burial ground of the Star Moon Great Emperor, right? According to what you said, the corpse of the Star Moon Emperor is very likely to be in that black coffin." The dog continued to ask. "It's not impossible." Bai Xinhua's voice had just landed when suddenly, everyone's gaze was fixed on the scroll on the coffin. If the Star Moon Great Emperor was really buried here, then the scroll that was emitting a faint silver light was very likely to be the cultivation method of the Star Moon Great Emperor. Star Moon change. Yihao looked at the scroll and felt something was wrong, because he had the first half of the cultivation method of the Star Moon Great Emperor, which was 4 pieces of silvery white paper. Logically speaking, the second half should be the same. How could it be such a thick scroll? However, he couldn't rule out the possibility that the cultivation method was hidden in the scroll. Suddenly, Dragon's Son Vagabond revealed a greedy expression and took the lead to rush to the black coffin, wanting to snatch the scroll before everyone else. Haha, Star Moon changes mind. Don't even think about snatching it from me. You want to take it all for yourself? No way. Dragon's Son Vagabond, don't even think about snatching that scroll. The dog and Bai Jun reacted one after another and followed behind Dragon's Son Vagabond. Duo Baosan looked at the back of the 3 people, sneered, and said, "Idiots, no matter how fast you are, can you be faster than my magic weapon?" Patting his waist, the gourd automatically floated in the air. Duo Baosan very agilely sat on it, and then the gourd instantly activated, overtaking the 3 people at the front. It wasn't far from the scroll. Seeing Duo Baosan activating the gourd, Dragon's Son Vagabond and the other 2 people realized that they could already use their spiritual power. Therefore, they attacked the Duo Baosan who had overtaken them. Duo Baosan didn't care about their attacks at all. He directly wore a 6-tier upper-grade armor and let everyone's attacks hit him. Those dazzling spiritual power attacks couldn't penetrate the armor on Duo Baosan's body, let alone break the highest grade gourd under Duo Baosan's legs. Seeing that Duo Baosan was about to get the treasure, Yihao glanced at the 3 people beside him and said with a smile, "Aren't you going to fight for it?" Monk Jin Guang was silent, but he looked around cautiously. Moreover, there was a sense of restlessness. The white-clothed swordsman held a long sword and said lightly, "No hurry." The beggar on crutches shook his shoulders and said with a smile, "I'm not in a hurry either. I always feel that there's something strange here, but I can't tell what's wrong. Besides, you didn't go either, right?" Yihao smiled but didn't say anything. His body was tense, and his spiritual power was quietly circulating. His eyes were fixed on the coffin. Indeed, as the little beggar said, there was something strange here, so he didn't act rashly. Even if the scroll was real, with these people here, how could they monopolize it? Moreover, his intuition told him that the Star Moon Great Emperor's cultivation method wouldn't be so easy to get. Duo Baosan, who took the lead, screamed and rode the gourd directly to the front of the coffin. With a big hand, the scroll with light blue light was directly in his hand. Duo Baosan fixed his eyes on it, and for some reason, he blushed a little. After Cultivator Long Yang arrived, he hurriedly grabbed the scroll from Duo Baosan's hand and browsed through it one by one. His face became as red as a blooming rose. This time, it was Yi Hao and the other two's turn to be curious. What was written on the scroll that made the four men blush? Just as they were about to step forward, Monk Goldenlight took a step forward and stopped in front of them. Seeing Monk Goldenlight's action, the three gave up the idea of moving forward, but their faces became a little dignified. In front of the coffin, Duo Baosan and the other three were stunned. What the hell was this? Was this a scroll left by the Star Moon Great Emperor? Why would the Star Moon Great Emperor read such vulgar and obscene things? It talked about the affairs between men and women. How could they not blush? At this time, a lazy voice suddenly came from the coffin in front of the four. Chapter 1583. Oh, I didn't expect half of you to not be fooled. Hearing this, Duo Baosan and the other three were shocked. They wanted to retreat, but no matter how hard they tried, they could not move. They felt as if their feet were fixed in place by some kind of magic. Yi Hao and the other three also became alert. This was a tomb. How could there be living people in a tomb? If there were, it could only be ghosts. No matter what it was, they felt that the voice did not sound friendly. Therefore, their bodies tensed up and they were ready to deal with any unexpected situation. Suddenly, the lid of the coffin lying in the center quietly opened. With a rumbling sound, it was as if someone had pushed it to the ground. Then, a white palm was placed on the wall of the coffin. Then, an elegant man with a pale face walked out of the coffin. The man smiled and took the scroll from Tsongo's hand. He held it in his hand and said, "This is for me to pass the time. Are you really interested?" No. Duo Baosan and the other three hurriedly shook their heads. They just thought that this was the cultivation method of the Star Moon Great Emperor, so they wanted to read it. They did not expect that it was just a vulgar book. Huh. The elegant man chuckled and seemed to be talking to himself. Many years ago, I was very confident like you. I thought that I would definitely be able to get the cultivation method of the Star Moon Great Emperor. Who would have thought that I would be trapped in this broken place for 100 years? 100 years. If I had been outside for 100 years, I could have done a lot of things, the beggar on crutches whispered. It seems that he is an old monster with bad intentions. How about it? Are you confident? Yi Hao shook his head slightly and said softly, "I can't see through this person's realm." At this time, the white-robed swordsman said expressionlessly, "This person's realm should be the Saint King realm that your ancient demon realm speaks of. However, he seems to be seriously injured and has not recovered yet." Saint King realm. The beggar on crutches could not help but exclaim in a low voice. He murmured, "That is an expert who could establish a sacred dynasty. Such a powerful person would be trapped here. How terrifying is this place?" Monk Jingguang still did not speak. He just stood in front of the three people, or more accurately, in front of Yi Hao. He looked coldly at the scholarly man who was holding the scroll. The scholarly man muttered to himself for a long time before he suddenly came back to his senses. He glanced at Yi Hao and the other three and said with a smile, "What are the four of you still standing there for?" As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Hao and the other three suddenly rushed forward involuntarily. Soon after, they arrived beside Duo Baosan. The 8 of them stood in a row, unable to move their feet. Yi Hao struggled for a while before immediately giving up. The person in front of him was a Saint King, so there was no way he could break free. "Senior, may I know why you called us here?" Yi Hao asked with a smile. "What's the matter? If I said I would kill you, would you believe me?" The scholarly man replied with a smile. "I don't." The beggar with the crutch said firmly, "If Senior wants to kill us, why go through so much trouble to bring us here?" The scholarly man's eyes lit up and he praised, "Not bad. There's still smart people. Senior, if you need anything, just tell us. We will definitely help you if we can," Duo Baosan hurriedly said, also wanting to get out of the current predicament. They just came to the tomb of the Star Moon Great Emperor to look for opportunities. Who would have thought that they would get into such big trouble? Yes, Senior, just tell us." Cultivator Long Yang and the other two also echoed. "Well, Since you are so enthusiastic, then I won't stand on ceremony. The scholarly man was in an excellent mood and laughed heartily. Yi Hao sneered his heart. You are really shameless. You were the one who tied us here, and you still say that we are so enthusiastic. The older you live, the thicker your skin becomes. The scholarly man waved his hand, and suddenly the four walls disappeared. This place turned into a tomb chamber. There were 3 coffins in front of them, but the strange thing was that only 2 of them were still emitting silver-white light. The leftmost one seemed to have been opened by someone. In addition, there were many heavenly treasures scattered around the coffins. The scholarly man explained, this place was originally not called the Star Moon Tomb. This is actually the residence of the Star Moon Great Emperor, called the Star Moon Palace. However, after the Star Moon Great Emperor died in battle, his subordinates put all the things he left behind here and sealed this palace in the depths of Mount Tai. It will appear for a period of time every 100 years. I came here 100 years ago. Like you, I also came here to look for the various treasures left behind by the Star Moon Great Emperor. However, just as I was about to get the treasures left behind by the Star Moon Great Emperor, a mighty power of stars came out from the leftmost coffin, seriously injuring me and completely trapping me here. That time I almost died. To be honest, the reason why all of you who came in here disappeared after death is all because they turned into spiritual chi of heaven and earth after death and were used to nourish the remaining 2 coffins. In order to restore my strength, I also stole 30% of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to restore myself. The scholarly man suddenly waved his hand, and Song Dog involuntarily came to his side. The scholarly man looked at Song Dog and smiled evilly. Song Dog immediately knew that something was wrong and wanted to struggle desperately. Unfortunately, his cultivation was only at the Spirit Emperor level. In the eyes of the scholarly man, he was no different from a child. How could he break free from the restraint of an adult? Therefore, if I want to leave this damn place completely, someone must open the remaining 2 coffins and release the last of the Star Moon Great Emperor's power. Only in this way can I leave this place. So, since you want to help me, you can go ahead and take the lead. After saying that, Song Dog suddenly rushed out involuntarily and came to the rightmost coffin. He looked at the coffin that was emitting a silver-white light with complicated patterns and ancient materials. Suddenly, he wanted to retreat. He felt that the cultivation technique was not as important as his life. However, the scholarly man was staring at it covetously. If he did not open it, he would die. What are you waiting for? Haven't you always wanted the cultivation technique of the Star Moon Great Emperor? Then open it. Song Dog looked hesitant. The scholarly man sneered. It seems that you still need my help. With a swing of his right hand, an attack was thrown directly at Song Dog's leg. A scream spread throughout the entire tomb. Bai Jun and the others seemed to be unable to bear to see such a bloody scene. They had been thinking of ways to escape from the scholarly man's restraint. If you don't open it, you will die directly. However, if you open it, you may not necessarily die. Choose for yourself. The scholarly man looked at this scene with interest. He had waited for this moment for too long. For this moment, he had planned for 100 years. He even did not hesitate to seal himself and tamper with the mechanism of the Star Moon Tomb itself to tie these people here. Chapter 1584. Now, his dream was finally about to come true. As long as the remaining 2 coffins were opened, he would be able to leave this place. By then, he would be free and unfettered. Song Dog looked at his bleeding thigh and swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Then, he made up his mind and closed his eyes. He roared, "Forget it. If I die, so be it." Song Dog placed his hands on the coffin lid made of an unknown material. His veins popped out as he pushed it forward with all his might. After Song Dog used all his strength, the coffin lid moved by 1/3 of the way. Song Dog's face lit up. Wasn't he still living well? The scholarly man also looked nervous as he stared at the coffin that Song Dog was moving. Yi Hao and the others did not dare to be careless. They also shifted their gazes to the pitch-black coffin. Although there were 3 coffins here, the one that Song Dog was pushing might contain what they wanted. Song Dog's eyes narrowed, as if he had seen something in the coffin. Just as he was about to use all his strength to push the coffin lid open, a dazzling white light blinded his eyes. The scholarly man looked at the dazzling light, and his heart trembled. His face turned even paler. His lips trembled as he muttered, "It's here. It's here." Before he could finish his sentence, a mighty star force rushed out from the coffin. Song Dog disappeared without a trace. He did not even have time to let out a cry. Yi Hao and the others were shocked and felt a lingering fear. This was definitely a dangerous place. Song Dog had only opened a third of the coffin lid and died immediately. What if he had opened all the coffins? What would have happened? The scholarly man was delighted because he felt that the sealing power of the Star Moon Palace on him seemed to have weakened. It seemed that this method would work. With a wave of his hand, he pushed Bai Jun to the front of the coffin. That position was where Song Dog had been standing. Bai Jun trembled. He was a prince of the White God Empire, an honorable existence. Now, he could only be forced to open the coffin. It was really lamentable. "If you don't do it, I'll do it." Under the threat of the scholarly man, Bai Jun's entire body trembled as he moved the lid of the coffin by a third. Before he could say anything, another wave of star energy came out, and the 2 princes of the 6th rank empire died. The scholarly man found it harder and harder to hide the excitement on his face. With a casual grab, Vagabond Longyang appeared in front of the coffin of death. He glanced at the beggar unwillingly. The beggar was powerless as well. After all, he could not even protect himself right now. There were saint rulers standing before them, so torturing them would be child's play. Vagabond Longyang sighed helplessly. With a rumbling sound, the entire coffin was pushed to the ground by him. Then, Vagrant Dragon's son closed his eyes as if he was waiting for the call of death. However, after a long time, there was no sign of star power. He couldn't help but smile. Could it be that the coffin's star power had been used up? Then, he looked at the coffin and saw a small black pearl lying quietly in it. What is this? Stretching out his right hand, he touched it. Boom! A waterfall like silver light hung in the air. Vagrant Dragon's son was dead. After the silver light disappeared, the scholarly man laughed and rushed to the side of the coffin. He raised the small black pearl and laughed loudly. "Ha! There is actually a chaos element pearl here. It just so happens that my old injury has not healed yet. With this pearl, I will definitely be able to return to the peak." Yi Hao and the other 4 looked serious. The scholarly man was using them to explore the way. Once all the threats were gone, he would be able to obtain the treasures inside. This was only a small coffin, and 3 people had already died. The remaining coffin was the biggest one. It was as big as 2 of the coffins on the left and right. Wanting to open it was very difficult. The scholarly man put away the chaos element pearl and came to the front of the 4 people. He smiled and said, "All right, they have done what they promised me. Now, it is your turn." The 5 people were silent. The scholarly man sneered and said, "Could it be that you want me to do it myself?" The beggar with the crutches kept struggling, but it was useless. Duo Baosin frowned and was thinking carefully. The golden light monk had a fierce expression, and the golden light became brighter. The white-robed swordsman was expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. Finally, Yi Hao said, "Let me do it." "What?" The 4 people were shocked. Yi Hao tried to smile and said, "Let me take the lead this time." The beggar with the crutches looked at Yi Hao and seemed to have thought of something. "All right, you go." A pushing force pushed Yi Hao to the front of the remaining coffin. The scholarly man crossed his arms and looked at the scene quietly. To him, it did not matter who went first. They were all going to die anyway. Yi Hao, who was standing in front of the coffin, swallowed nervously. To be honest, he was not completely confident. However, in the current situation, even if there was only a 10% chance, he still had to try. He took a deep breath and placed his hands on the cold coffin lid. With a low shout, the veins on his forehead bulged, and he pushed with all his strength. Bang! The huge coffin lid was pushed to the ground by Yi Hao. The scholarly man was shocked. He did not expect this kid, who looked like he had the lowest cultivation level, to be able to lift the coffin lid in one go. Interesting. The golden light monk looked at Yi Hao, who was standing in front of the coffin, and became more anxious. The white-robed swordsman slowly pulled out his sword and pointed it at the back of the scholarly man's head with a cold expression. Duo bows and stuck his head out to look. He wanted to know what was inside the coffin. The beggar with the crutches placed all his hopes on Yi Hao. If Yi Hao could not survive, then there was no need for the rest of them to try. Yi Hao slowly exhaled. He looked at the treasures lying quietly at the bottom of the coffin, waiting for someone to take them away. He could not help but smile. Buzz! Yi Hao's palm had just touched the treasures at the bottom of the coffin when a dazzling light flashed. The scholarly man and the other four hurriedly covered their eyes. Then they saw an unbelievable scene. They saw the power of the stars suddenly gushing out from the coffin, rushing into the air, and forming a transparent circle. In the transparent circle, there were 4 pieces of paper shining with silver-white light. In the center of the paper, there was a young man with silver-white skin. The scholarly man took a closer look. Wasn't that man Yi Hao? He could not help but turn pale with fright. What was going on? He was sure that the 4 pieces of paper recorded the cultivation method of the Star Moon Emperor. But why were the papers surrounding Yi Hao now? Why didn't the power of the stars devour Yi Hao? What was with Yi Hao's silver-white skin? These questions not only lingered in the scholarly man's mind, but also in the minds of the white-robed swordsman and the other 2. Only the beggar with the crutches smiled at this scene. Chapter 1585. Yi Hao, who was floating in midair, smiled. He looked at the 4 pieces of silver-white paper around him and was extremely excited. This was the main reason why he came to the tomb of the Star Moon Emperor. He wanted to find the second half of the stellar moon transformation cultivation technique. Now, he had 8 pieces of silver-white paper in his hand. The main mission was finally completed. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for completing the stellar moon transformation main mission. The reward is 1 level 6 spiritual herb, 1 level 6 elixir, and 1 chance to summon a divine level general. Yi Hao listened to the pleasant voice in his mind and felt extremely happy. The level 6 spiritual herb and level 6 elixir were enough for the Tianyuan Empire to produce 2 spirit sky emperors. The most important thing was to summon a divine level general. He was looking forward to it. He didn't know which divine level general he would summon. However, it wasn't the time to use these rewards. There were more important things to do now. After the vast power of the stars surrounded him, it didn't intend to leave. Instead, it rushed into Yi Hao's body and began to transform Yi Hao's physique. The power of the stars rampaged through Yi Hao's body like locusts passing through. Everywhere it passed, there would be nothing left. Transforming one's physique meant breaking the original physique and reshaping it. The pain was unbearable for ordinary people. Roar! Yi Hao couldn't help but cry out. He felt as if tens of thousands of small hammers were hitting every part of his body. The intense pain made him break out in cold sweat. The transformation lasted for 2 hours. Yi Hao wailed for 2 hours. The refined man and the others also watched for 2 hours. In fact, after Yi Hao obtained the 4 pieces of paper, the seal on the scholarly man by the Star Moon Palace disappeared. However, the scholarly man was unwilling to give up. He was unwilling to let Yi Hao snatch away the Star Moon Emperor's cultivation technique. He wanted to snatch it back. Therefore, he was waiting for the power of stars around Yi Hao to disappear. If the refined man didn't leave, Monk Golden Light and the others naturally couldn't leave. 2 hours later, the transformation of the physique was finally completed. Yi Hao carefully examined the structure of his body and found that his body was indeed much stronger. Moreover, when he used the stellar moon transformation previously, his skin was silver white, which was too eye-catching. But now it was different. He still had ordinary skin, but if you looked closely, you would find that there was a layer of dim silver light hidden under his skin. This was a sign of restraint, which also meant that his body had become stronger. Yi Hao felt that when he breathed, the surrounding spiritual chi of heaven and earth would involuntarily gather around him. The speed at which he absorbed spiritual chi had also increased, which was beneficial to his cultivation. This was not the end. Yi Hao suddenly felt that his cultivation level was rising rapidly. Soon, he broke through the 8th Order Spirit Monarch realm and reached the 9th Order Spirit Monarch realm. Then, with a loud boom, it was as if he had entered a whole new realm. It was the Spirit Heaven Emperor realm. Yi Hao had borrowed the power of the stars to break through to the Spirit Heaven Emperor realm. Boom! Boom! With 3 consecutive rumbling sounds, Yi Hao broke through 5 realms in one go, directly reaching the 3rd order of the Spirit Sky Emperor. At this point, the power of the stars had been completely exhausted, and Yi Hao had safely landed. Yi Hao did not expect that this trip would bring him such a rich harvest. Needless to say, the system's reward was needless to say. Just take his cultivation level as an example. He could be considered one of the top experts in the ancient demon domain. The moment Yi Hao landed, the scholarly man revealed a fierce look and sent a palm forward. At this time, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the Star Moon tomb, and then the entire ground began to shake. The scholarly man's attack also missed because of this. Monk Golden Light and the other 3 also broke free from the shackles. The entire tomb began to shake violently, and the Star Moon Emperor's tomb was about to collapse. Outside the tomb, the sleeping Tunshin suddenly felt the ground shake. He opened his sleepy eyes and found that the stone doors in the 4 directions of Mount Tai began to collapse. He could not help but be shocked. He muttered to himself, "What happened? Why did the Star Moon tomb collapse? Wait, if the tomb collapses, how will Yi Hao come out?" Before he could think too much, gravel rolled down, and the 4 stone doors were all blocked. After shaking for a while, the entire Star Moon Emperor's tomb was completely closed. Some of the cultivators who were still waiting outside the tomb couldn't help but curse a few times when they saw this, and then they left angrily. There were still some cultivators who didn't give up. They wanted to wait for the people in the tomb to come out and then rob them of all the treasures they found in the tomb. Little did they know that any one of the 6 people in the tomb was not someone they could offend. After an unknown period of time, Tunshin looked at the collapsed tomb and was a little disappointed. Suddenly, a terrifying spirit power fluctuation came from the west. After hesitating for a moment, Tunshin rushed to the west. From afar, he saw 5 figures besieging a white-robed, scholarly man with a pale face. The scholarly man looked like a saint king, but he was only a saint king. On the other hand, the 5 people besieging him were 4 Ninth Order Spirit Emperors, and 1 was 3rd Order Spirit Sky Emperor. Even so, the 5 of them were not at a disadvantage. Taking a closer look, Yi Hao was among the 5 people, which made Tunshin very excited. At this moment, the Green Mountain Imperial City welcomed an esteemed guest. The esteemed guest was an old man, and beside him was a Spirit Sky Emperor Realm cultivator. The old man stood at the entrance of the hall and said to the Qing family's patriarch, Qing Yunji, "Patriarch Qing, I'll have to trouble you to inform him that Gu Sheng from the Pill Sect Empire of the 6th rank has something important to discuss with you." Qing Yunji, who had just received Gu Sheng into the palace, smiled and said, "Gu Sheng, I can help you pass the message, but our Spirit Sky Emperor has been in seclusion recently, so I don't know if he can see you." Qing Yunji's back was straight, and he was in high spirits. The current him was also a 9th Order Spirit Emperor, and the unreachable Spirit Sky Emperor realm seemed to be within his reach. And all of this was thanks to the current ruler of the Green Mountain Empire, Ling Junyun, the Spirit Sky Emperor. Ever since Ling Junyun broke through to the Spirit Sky Emperor realm, many small countries came to submit. Following that, there were also many alchemy masters. These alchemy masters used the heavenly materials and earthly treasures accumulated by the Green Mountain Imperial family to refine many pills. The patriarchs of the few great clans were the first to benefit, and their cultivation bases were also the highest apart from the Spirit Sky Emperor. Following that, there were some other cultivators in the Green Mountain Imperial City. Gradually, the foundation of the Green Mountain Empire became more and more solid, and they were not much different from the 6th rank empire. Thus, at this moment, Qing Yunji had the qualifications to face the emissary of the Pill Sect Empire without lowering his status, and responded with the same attitude. All right, thank you, Patriarch Qing. Gu Sheng looked at Qing Yunji's blurry back and sighed. Who would have thought that the current Green Mountain Empire would become the 6th rank empire of the ancient demon region? Gu Mo was a little curious and said, compared to this, I am more curious about that strange woman. How did she break through from a Spirit Emperor realm to the Spirit Sky Emperor realm in such a short period of time? This is probably the fastest cultivation record in the history of the ancient demon region. Chapter 1586. Once upon a time, he was an honored guest of the Green Mountain Imperial family. Even if he wanted to see the Green Mountain Emperor, he didn't need to report and could directly enter. However, today was different from the past. No one thought highly of the Pill Sect Empire, and Old Gu had a favor to ask of them, so he naturally had to lower his stance. That's right. This little girl isn't simple at all. It would be fine if she could break through so quickly on her own, but the entire Qingshan Empire is also thriving under her rule. Based on this trend, it's not impossible to establish a sacred dynasty. Hearing this, Gu Mo's expression turned solemn as he asked, Old Gu, can another sacred dynasty really appear in the ancient demon realm? Ha! Old Gu laughed heartily and said, It's been 100 years. It's time for a sacred dynasty to appear in the ancient demon realm. Then do you think highly of this empress? Old Gu shook his head and smiled without saying a word. Not long after, Qing Yunji walked out and said with a smile, Old Gu, Spirit Heaven Emperor invites you. Thank you. Old Gu cupped his hands and walked into the hall with Qing Yunji. As for Gu Mo, he tactfully did not follow. Walking into the hall, a peerless woman in a golden dress sat on the dragon throne. The woman rested her head on her hand and looked at the mountain of memorials on the table expressionlessly. Your Majesty, Old Gu has arrived. Hearing this, the woman raised her head and said gently, Got it. Qing Zhuhua has worked hard. You may leave. Yes. After Qing Yunji left, Spirit Heaven Emperor stood up and smiled at Old Gu. Uncle Gu, you must be tired from the journey. Please take a seat. Thank you, Spirit Heaven Emperor. Old Gu cupped his hands and sat down, then said apologetically, Spirit Heaven Emperor, when your father passed away, I was handling political matters in Tianyuan. Later on, something happened to the Pill Sect, so I didn't have the time to visit your father. I have always felt guilty. Ling Tiandi laughed. Uncle Gu is too serious. When Royal Father was alive, he always told me that the person he admired the most was you. If he knew that you had specially come to visit him today, he would definitely be very happy. Old Gu hesitated, but in the end, he cupped his hands and said, Spirit Heaven Emperor, I actually came here today for 2 matters. One is to visit an old friend, and the other is to ask Spirit Heaven Emperor to help my Pill Sect to tide over this crisis. With that, Old Man Gu went to the main hall and knelt on the ground. It had been a long time since Old Man Gu had knelt to someone. However, reality forced him to lower his proud and stubborn head. Suddenly, Spirit Heaven Emperor, who was sitting high on the dragon throne, covered his forehead with his hand. Then, his black pupils turned red. Then, Spirit Heaven Emperor lazily leaned on the dragon throne and silently looked at the old man below the stage. Old Gu didn't get a response, so he repeated his words in a deep voice. Ling Tiandi stood up, placed his right hand on his waist, and laughed. You old man, it's not like you don't know the strength of my Qingshan Empire. Furthermore, why should I agree to your request? Elder Gu was stunned by Ling Juanyun's sudden rude words and didn't come back to his senses for a long while. He did not understand why Ling Tiandi, who was extremely polite to him a second ago, suddenly changed her attitude in the next second. Could it be that the request for help had angered her? You old man, you don't have any self-awareness. Why are you still kneeling there? Spirit Heaven Emperor snorted and laid on the dragon throne in an extremely enchanting manner. Old Gu raised his head and looked at Spirit Heaven Emperor's figure. He was startled for a moment before saying, Spirit Heaven Emperor, you have misunderstood. The Pill sect has requested for reinforcements, so they will definitely offer generous rewards. Oh, what reward? Spirit Heaven Emperor looked playfully at the stubborn figure who still maintained his last bit of dignity. If our Pill sect wins this battle, then in the future, our two empires will equally divide the ancient devil region and become allies with each other. We will never invade each other. Ah! Spirit Heaven Emperor chuckled and said, "You old man, you want to get something for nothing." Old Gu's face turned red, and he felt that he couldn't hold it in any longer. Thus, he continued, "Of course, as long as Qingshan is willing to send troops, the Pill Sect Empire is willing to provide all kinds of resources. They will also send many alchemists to refine all kinds of pills for Qingshan." All right, I don't want to hear this. I only want to ask for one thing. If you have it, I'll send my troops. If you don't, then forget it. Spirit Heaven Emperor impatiently waved his hand and interrupted Old Gu. Old Gu's face darkened. He concealed his anger very well and said in a deep voice, "Spirit Heaven Emperor, please speak. Do you have the snow tree root?" Old Gu's expression changed greatly as he said, "The snow tree root is a stage 9 spiritual object. It is something that can only be chanced upon and not sought after." "Stop. I'm asking if you have it or not." "No." Old Gu's face was gloomy as he said, "Our Pill sect is unable to take out this item." "You can't take it out?" Spirit Heaven Emperor smiled playfully. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically as he said coldly, "If you can't take it out, then hurry up and scram. You're wasting my time." "You." Old Gu suddenly stood up, his face ashen. He never expected that the peerless woman on the dragon throne would say such words. "You what? Hurry up and scram." "Good, very good." Old Gu suppressed the anger in his heart and angrily walked out of the palace gate. "Old Gu, you go." Qing Yunji, who was chatting with Uemo at the door, suddenly saw Old Gu leave the palace angrily and could not help but ask anxiously. Unfortunately, Old Gu did not reply. Gumo's face turned cold as he hurriedly followed. Qing Yunji was a little confused as he thought to himself, even if the two of them didn't come to an agreement, it shouldn't have turned out like this. He turned around and was about to enter when he was ordered to leave. "Scram! All of you scram!" When Qing Yunji heard Spirit Heaven Emperor's angry roar, he hurriedly lowered his head and left the palace dejectedly. Before he left, he was still filled with doubts. Inside the Great Hall, on the dragon throne, Spirit Heaven Emperor's forehead suddenly hurt again. While Spirit Heaven Emperor covered his forehead, he cursed softly. Then, his scarlet eyes returned to normal. Spirit Heaven Emperor opened his eyes and was shocked when he saw his sitting posture. His face turned red, and he hurriedly put down his 2 snow-white legs. She shook her dizzy head, and when she looked down the stage again, she realized that Old Gu was no longer there. When she thought of her sitting posture just now, her expression became extremely ugly. Then, she ordered someone to call back Qing Yunji, who had just walked out not long ago. When he found out from Qing Yun that Old Gu's face was ashen when he left, he knew that he had caused a lot of trouble. Then, he waved his hand and asked Qing Yunji to leave. He leaned weakly on the dragon throne. Qing Yunji, who had retreated, was even more confused. Wasn't the one who was talking to Old Gu just now Spirit Heaven Emperor himself? If that was the case, how could Spirit Heaven Emperor not know what had just happened? And why did Old Gu leave? Chapter 1587. Shueshan, an elegant man with white skin, stared at a black figure in front of him. He said with a gloomy face, "Kid, hand over the Star Moon Monarch's martial art now. Otherwise, you will die here." Yi Hao didn't care and said, "You want to kill me? Let's see if you have the ability." Monk Golden Light shone brightly, and his iron fists were like tigers. The white-robed swordsman waved his long sword, and a silver waterfall hung high in the sky. The beggar with a walking stick pointed, and a black tiger pounced. The three of them remembered Yi Hao's kindness, so after the tomb collapsed, the three of them chose to stand on Yi Hao's side and fight the elegant man with him. As for Duo Bao San, He didn't put in any effort, and his big eyes looked at Yi Hao from time to time. To be precise, he wanted to get the Star Moon Emperor's cultivation technique from Yi Hao. Yi Hao didn't care about Duo Baosan's little tricks and attacked the elegant man with the other three. The elegant man looked up to the sky and roared, "Ha ha ha, I'm a Saint King. What can you do to me?" With a wave of his hand, Monk Golden Light was sent flying by a slap, crashing into a nearby mountain wall. With a stomp of his right foot, the waterfall of silver light above his head shattered into pieces. His eyes narrowed, and the fierce black tiger charged forward and disappeared into nothingness. This was the strength of a Saint King. It wasn't something that a few spirit monarch cultivators could compare to. Yi Hao shouted in a low voice, and the power of stars flowed around him. The Wu Dao sword reappeared in his hand, and he slowly gathered momentum and said, "Sword Saint descends, the second style, Sword Saint descends." Boom! An old man's shadow suddenly appeared behind Yi Hao, and he also held the sword in the same posture. Ding dong! Congratulations to Sue for using the second style of Sword Saint descends. You're rewarded with a 5th-level spiritual herb, mixed yuan grass. Go! Yi Hao shouted. The My Sword of Dao in his hand transformed into a ray of light that shot towards a scholarly man with supreme power. The scholarly man's eyes turned cold. He circulated spiritual energy in his hands, and a huge bell formed behind him. Just as the Wu Dao sword was about to hit him, he waved his hands, and the huge bell rushed forward, blocking all of Yi Hao's attacks. Then, the bell energy blasted towards Yi Hao. Bang! At the same time, Yi Hao kept looking around. Although he was already the Spirit Heaven Emperor, this did not mean that he had the strength to fight against the Saint King. He was only doing this to stall for time, waiting for the arrival of the heaven-devouring beast. The scholarly man's face lit up with joy as he looked at the black figure that had been sent flying backward. Just as he was about to rush forward to catch him, a shadow suddenly flashed in front of him. Then, he saw a little dog appear at Yi Hao's feet. Where did this little dog come from? Scram! At this time, Monk Golden Light and the other three also arrived behind Yi Hao. The 4 of them were more or less injured. The Saint King was indeed a Saint King. A casual attack from him was not something they could withstand. Yi Hao smiled at the 4 of them and said, "You guys can go. Leave this to me." The beggar clutched his chest and said with a smile, "Are you sure?" Not only did the scholarly man's attack shatter his attack, it had also severely injured him. "Yes, we'll meet again if fate wills it." As soon as he finished speaking, the beggar patted Yi Hao's shoulder and turned into a ray of light and left. He still had a bright future ahead of him and did not want to lose his life here. As for Yi Hao's kindness in helping him escape, if there was a chance, he could only repay it in the future. The white-clothed swordsman glanced at the little dog at Yi Hao's feet. Then, he came to Yi Hao's side and whispered, "If there's a chance in the future, we'll meet again in the desolate ancient world." "All right." Yi Hao looked at the white-clothed swordsman and murmured, "The desolate ancient world? Although it's still quite far away from me, it's not impossible." "Third Hai Yi, you're lucky this time. I'll let you go." Duo Baosan also said, "If you come to the desolate ancient world in the future, I'll definitely treat you well." "Ha ha, Prince Jewel, don't go back on your words." Yi Hao replied with a smile. In the end, only Yi Hao, Tun Tian, the scholarly man, and Monk Golden Light were left. "Aren't you leaving?" Yi Hao turned his head and looked at the sun mark on Monk Golden Light's chest. He had seen this mark on Huang Qing'er before. This was also the reason why he had risked his life to save Monk Golden Light in the herb garden. It was because he wanted to find out some clues about Huang Qing'er from Monk Golden Light. Along the way, Monk Jin Guang did not seem to know anything about it. Since that was the case, there was no need for Yi Hao to force him to stay by his side. Hence, he wanted him to leave. Unexpectedly, Monk Golden Light shook his head and pointed at the scholarly man not far away. Then, he pointed at Yi Hao. Yi Hao did not understand. At this moment, Tun Tian said, "He's worried that you'll be killed by the Sage King. Hence, he's unwilling to leave." "Kid, are you done with your funeral?" The scholarly man suddenly said, Those people are not important. Hence, I can let them go. However, you're different. You can't leave. I didn't intend to leave in the first place. Yi Hao chuckled. It's best if you hand over the cultivation technique. Otherwise, die. Yi Hao sneered and said, Tun Tian, this is the second thing you promised me. Cripple him. All right. Hearing that, devouring heaven laughed out loud and rushed towards the scholarly man. The scholarly man looked at the little mutt and laughed loudly. A little mutt like you wants to cripple me? What a joke. I'm a sage king. Before he finished speaking, the little mutt's body suddenly became huge. There were even 2 horns on his forehead. Following that, a sage king's cultivation raged in his body. This is a sage king of spirits. Damn, how can this unassuming little mutt have such a high cultivation? Tun Tian grinned. The scholarly man felt a gust of cold wind blow past his back. He turned and ran. At this moment, cultivation techniques were not as important as his own life. Tun Tian opened his mouth and inhaled. The scholarly man could not help but retreat. Just as he was about to fly into Tun Tian's mouth, a huge palm slapped the scholarly man into the ground. After a cloud of dust, the scholarly man was about to get up when another palm slapped him. This repeated a few times. The scholarly man felt that his bones were about to fall apart. He learned his lesson and did not dare to act rashly again. Then, Tun Tian picked up the scholarly man and placed him beside Yi Hao's feet. The scholarly man could not withstand a single blow from Tun Tian. Tun Tian's body shrunk. Looking at the half-dead scholarly man, he said, this guy was severely injured. Hence, he could not fully unleash the strength of a sage king. Otherwise, he would not have been unable to last a single round. Yi Hao chuckled. He found a spatial ring on the scholarly man's body and said with a smile, this guy has been in the tomb for 100 years. He must have a lot of good stuff. Now it's all mine. Chapter 1588. Yi Hao carefully looked at the treasures in the interspatial ring. As expected, not only was there the Chaos Essence Bead, there were also many high-tier weapons and treasures. Including the rewards from the system, Yi Hao's trip was very generous. He took out the Chaos Essence Bead and gave it to Monk Golden Light. He smiled. Now you should be relieved. Monk Golden Light rejected Yi Hao's good intentions and pointed at Yi Hao expressionlessly. Yi Hao turned to Tunshin and asked, what does this mean? Tunshin understood Monk Golden Light's gesture and said, based on my guess, it's not that this person can't speak, it's that he can't speak. Also, his origin isn't simple. His gesture just now said that he has nowhere to go and can only follow you. As for the Chaos Essence Bead, he doesn't want it. Is that so? Yi Hao thought carefully and looked at the sun mark on the monk's chest. He smiled. Then let's follow. Tunshin, take that trash on the ground, and we'll return to Tianyuan. Okay. With that, the group began their journey back to Tianyuan. Yi Hao held the interspatial ring in his hand and smiled even more. With his current foundation, he would definitely be able to raise Tianyuan to grade 6. 1 month later, Tianyuan Empire. Hu Sanyang, Wei Dinghua, Yi Yi, and Lin clan ancestors stood in the main hall, while the others stood below. They were discussing a matter that involved the entire ancient demon domain. Half a month ago, White God Empire and Song, or Empire, brought all the spirit emperors and above cultivators to Pill Sect Empire. They were probably about to reach Pill Sect Empire. As an ally of Pill Sect Empire, they were now discussing whether to send troops to save Pill Sect Empire. Of course, Yu Shu stood out and said, everyone, don't forget that when Tianyuan was in trouble, it was old Gu who saved Tianyuan. Now that Pill Sect is in trouble, is Tianyuan going to stand by and do nothing? Of course not. Hu Sanyang's red lips moved slightly. Of course we'll save them, but we need to discuss how. Not bad. Wei Dinghua continued. Before the young emperor left, he left the 4 of us in charge of everything in Tianyuan. Now that the young emperor has not returned, we must not act rashly. Act rashly? The corners of Yushu's mouth curled into a sneer as she said, I think you guys are greedy for life and afraid of death, right? You? What are you talking about? That's right. Aren't we in the middle of a discussion? How can you say that? When your pill-sex alchemist came, did our Tian Yuan not contribute enough? The other people in the palace were not happy and started to refute. Hu Sanyang and the other three also had a dark expression. Unexpectedly, the sneer on the corners of Yushu's mouth grew even deeper as she said, All of you are worried, Pa. Yushu's voice had yet to fade when her face already suffered a slap. He stood rooted to the ground and looked at Yuxing in confusion. Yuxing cupped his hands at everyone in the hall and said, Yushu is too worried. Everyone, don't take it to heart. Let's continue discussing how to rescue them. Hu Sanyang looked at the woman under the stage. Her eyes could not hide the admiration. Yuxing, you Pa. Another slap, but this time it was not from Yuxing. It was from a black figure. When that black silhouette appeared above the main hall, other than Yushu, everyone knelt down. Greetings, young emperor. At this moment, a monk with golden light shining from outside the hall, a little mutt, and a scholarly man walked in. The scholarly man looked at everyone kneeling on the ground and smiled. You're doing well as an emperor, aren't you? No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. Yi Hao glared at him. The scholarly man shrank his neck and did not speak anymore. Yi Hao looked coldly at Yushu and said, This slap is for your lack of manners and impudence. If you dare to do it again, I'm sorry, our Tian Yuan will not tolerate a great Buddha like you. With that, Yi Hao directly climbed onto the dragon throne. Yuxing tugged at the corner of Yushu's clothes. Yushu looked angrily at the figure on the dragon throne and knelt down unwillingly. Yi Hao looked at the figure below the stage and said in a low voice, Rise. Thank you, young emperor. I've heard about the Pill Sect Empire on the way here. Old Gu is my master, and the Pill Sect Empire is our Tian Yuan Alliance's ally. Therefore, we will go to the Pill Sect's aid in half a month. Go and prepare. Yes, Yi Hao's majesty was on full display. No one dared to go against Yi Hao's orders. Everyone left the hall except for Hu Sanyang and the other three who were asked to stay by Yi Hao. Yi Hao glanced at the lazily sleeping, sky-devouring beast on the table and smiled. How's our Tian Yuan strength now? Hu Sanyang stood up and said, reporting to young emperor, our Tian Yuan has 5 high-level spirit monarchs, 15 mid-level spirit monarchs, 62 low-level spirit monarchs, and more than 10,000 spirit emperors. That's not enough. Yi Hao lightly knocked on the table and said, if we were to fight against a 6th-rank empire, spirit emperors would be useless. The battle would be between spirit monarchs and spirit heavenly emperors. The Lin family's ancestor secretly glanced at Yi Hao. He was now a 9th-order spirit monarch, but he couldn't see through Yi Hao. He was shocked and said, young emperor, the battle between 6th-rank empires will definitely involve the spirit heavenly emperor. However, our Tian Yuan doesn't have such a strong expert. If we rashly participate in the battle, who said we don't? Yi Hao smiled and slowly released his cultivation. 4th-order spirit heavenly emperor. Other than monk Jingguang and the elegant man, everyone else was shocked. When Yi Hao left, he was only in the spirit monarch realm. Now that he returned, he was a 4th-order spirit heavenly emperor. This strength was one of the best in the entire ancient demon realm. That's not all, Jingguang. Monk Jingguang suddenly released his aura. 5th-order spirit heavenly emperor. Each one was more shocking than the last. Speaking of monk Jingguang's cultivation, Yi Hao was also shocked. He thought that his talent was good enough, but he didn't expect that after they left Mount Tai, monk Jingguang's cultivation would increase crazily in a month. It was almost a realm every 4 days, and it only stopped when he reached the 5th-order spirit heavenly emperor. Regarding this, Devouring Heaven's explanation was that monk Jingguang had been suppressing his cultivation, so when he stopped suppressing it, his cultivation would naturally start to rise slowly. However, although monk Jingguang's cultivation was high, he might not be able to defeat Yi Hao. After all, Yi Hao was able to challenge and kill people above his level from the beginning. Only then did the four of them start to carefully size up monk Jin Guang. Looking at his shining golden light, they felt that he was extraordinary. The Lin family's ancestor shifted his gaze to the elegant man. With a trace of anticipation in his heart, he asked with a smile, "What about this person? Not only him, Hu Sanyang, Wei Dinghua, and Yi were also filled with anticipation." Chapter 1589. The refined man laughed and thought to himself, "Is it finally my turn? Are you ready? Start to greet me with eyes of worship." Unexpectedly, before he could say anything, Yi had already spoken before him and said, "Ignore him. This is trash. Let's continue our discussion." "Oh," the four of them responded. When they looked at the refined man again, their eyes were mixed with a trace of disdain. "Air." The refined man's head was full of black lines. "Huh." At the side, the reserved monk Jin Guang laughed silently. The refined man's face darkened even more. While Yi Hao was discussing with the four of them, he inadvertently glanced at the refined man. In the past month, the refined man had tried his best to escape, but without exception, he had been captured by the heaven-devouring beast. In the end, Yi Hao used force to threaten him and forced him to submit. After using the earth fiend Black Chi to control him, he returned the chaos essence pearl to him. Therefore, he was actually at the spirit little Saint King realm now. He was a real spirit little Saint King, not an incomplete Saint King realm. Yi Hao and the four of them discussed some more details, and then a tier 6 pill flew out. Hu Sanyang took the pill and asked in confusion, "This is..." "A tier 6 pill can help you break through to the spirit heaven emperor realm." Sanyang's face was overjoyed as she smiled and said, "Thank you, your majesty." The other three looked at him with envy, but they were only envious and not jealous. Among the four of them, Sanyang had followed Yi Hao the longest. Every time Yi Hao left, the matters of Tian Yuan would be handed over to Sanyang to take care of, so no one had any objections to giving this pill to Sanyang. "All right, you guys can leave. I'm going into seclusion for the next few days to refine some pills and raise the strength of Tian Yuan by another level." Yes. Soon, only Yi Hao and the heaven-devouring beast were left in the hall. Yi Hao brought the heaven-devouring beast into the secret room and took out the heaven and earth bathing furnace to refine the pill. The heaven-devouring beast consciously protected Yi Hao. The materials Yi Hao used all came from the scholarly man's ring. After all, this was the accumulation of a saint ruler over 100 years. These things could not be underestimated. As for the chance to summon the divine general, Yi Hao did not intend to use it because he could handle the current situation. Yi Hao collected his thoughts and activated the alchemy furnace. Batch after batch of spiritual herbs were poured into the furnace, and batch after batch of 5th-grade medicinal pills formed around Yi Hao. Pill Sect City, Pill Sect Manor. After Old Gu ran into a wall in the Qingshan Empire, he went to a few other rank 5 empires and roped in a group of experts to come to the Alchemy Sect City. Then he entered the Alchemy Sect City and sat in the alchemy room with the sect leader of the Alchemy Empire, refining pills. Guo acted as a guard to protect the two of them. In 10 days, the two of them had refined no less than 100 level 5 elixirs. Because of this, the Alchemy Sect City had more than 10 spirit monarch cultivators. As for the level 6 elixirs, Jin Sheng had only managed to refine 2 with all his might. Although Jin Sheng was a level 6 alchemist, it did not mean that he would definitely succeed every time he refined a level 6 elixir. Furthermore, refining a level 6 elixir consumed a huge amount of spiritual herbs. Otherwise, the Alchemy Sect Empire would not have been besieged by the other 2 level 6 empires. Jin Sheng looked at the alchemy furnace in front of him. Suddenly, he was distracted and an explosion came from the alchemy furnace. He was a little depressed because he knew that the alchemy had failed again and the materials had been wasted. On the other side, a rumbling sound came from the ancient alchemy furnace. Another 10 perfect level 6 elixirs were produced. Old Gu took a deep breath and placed his hands on his knees. He looked at Jin Sheng and said, "What's wrong?" Did you fail again? Yes. Jin Sheng nodded his head indifferently and said, You're right. No matter how many level 5 elixirs I refine, it's useless. After all, the war is a competition of high-level fighting strength. If our alchemy sect doesn't have a few Spirit Heaven Emperor experts guarding it, no matter how many Spirit Monarchs we have, it's useless. That's why I've been refining level 6 elixirs for the past few days. However, I've only managed to refine 2 of them, and they're of the highest quality. At most, I'll be able to create 2 low-level Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators. It's fine. If you fail this time, you can try again next time. Old Gu encouraged from the side. Suddenly, Jin Sheng's eyes lit up as he looked at Old Gu and said, Old Gu, why don't you refine this level 6 elixir? With your strength, you can definitely refine it. Elder Gu rolled his eyes at him and said with a smile, Do you think that my old bones are tired of living? Jin Sheng seemed to have suddenly remembered something. He patted his head and said, Damn it, I forgot. Old Gu, don't mind me. I was just saying. Old Gu replied indifferently. He walked to the window and emptied his mind. Jin Sheng also came to the window and asked, Old Gu, you said that you want to find allies. Did you only find a few 5th-rank empires? Old Gu closed his eyes and smiled. You want to ask me if I want to find Ling Junyuan, right? Yes. Jin Sheng said. I heard that not only did Ling Junyuan break through to the Spirit Heaven Emperor realm, he is even a middle-stage Spirit Heaven Emperor. Also, that Qing Yunji and Yuing Luan have also broken through to the low-stage Spirit Heaven Emperor, and the Green Mountain Empire has already become a 6th-rank empire. I've looked for him. You've looked for him? Jin Sheng's face was overjoyed as he asked. Then what was the result? You and Ling Junyuan's father are old friends. Did Ling Junyuan agree to send troops to help? She told me to scram. Old Gu laughed bitterly. Huh? Jin Sheng was stunned for a long time. He thought that he had heard wrongly and asked again, Old Gu, what did you just say? Did I hear wrong? Old Gu opened his eyes and said with a smile, You didn't hear wrong. She told me to scram. It's over. Jin Sheng's face was ashen as he said with a gloomy expression, It's over this time. The Pills Sect Empire is completely hopeless. That might not be the case. Old Gu changed the topic, but he was not prepared to continue. However, Jin Sheng's appetite had already been piqued, and he could not help but ask anxiously, What do you mean by that? You mean that there is still a chance for this matter to turn around? Old Gu smiled, but did not say anything. He returned to his seat and continued to refine pills. Jin Sheng could not figure out, but his mood was much better. He also began to refine pills. Bang! Although he had failed, he was not discouraged. He picked up the ingredients and continued to refine pills with high fighting spirit. At this moment, in the imperial city of the Green Mountain Empire, 3 teams quietly left the city. The leaders were the 3 great Spirit Heaven Emperor realm experts of the Green Mountain Empire. 100 miles away from the Pills Sect Empire, there was a city. In the City Lord's mansion, there was an intense discussion going on. The 2 sides of the discussion were the White God Empire and the Tsang, or Empire. They were discussing how to fight against the Pills Sect Empire. The White God Empire suggested bypassing the major cities and directly attacking the Danzong City, the capital of the Danzong Empire. As long as the Danzong City was taken down, the rest of the cities would surrender without a fight. The Tsang, or Empire, expressed their opposition. They believed that they should slowly advance step by step until they reached the Danzong City. Only in this way could the Danzong Empire be completely eliminated. Both sides could not come to an agreement on this matter. Chapter 1590. In the tent, Bai Tiandi and Song Tiandi sat on the main seats. The rest of the people were divided into 2 factions and stood at the side. This time, the 2 empires joined forces with their vassal states and sent out a total of 30,000 troops. They were all Spirit the Arch cultivators. There were low-level, mid-level, and high-level Spirit the Arch cultivators. In addition, the emperors of the 2 empires were all at the 6th level of the Spirit Heaven Emperor realm. This time, they personally led the expedition, showing their determination to destroy the Pill Sect Empire. In addition to these two Spirit Heaven Emperors, there were also some Spirit Heaven Emperors hiding in the dark, waiting for orders at any time. 30,000 Spirit Darch cultivators, dozens of Spirit Heaven Emperor powerhouses, countless siege formations, and weapons. This time, the two empires and their vassal states were out in full force. Bai Tiandi looked at the chaotic tent and said solemnly, "Enough. Everyone, listen to me. Don't delay and directly attack the Pill Sect City. As long as we take down the Pill Sect City, everything will be fine." Song Tiandi said with a smile, "Bai Tiandi, I don't think so. With the strength of our two empires, even if we plan slowly, what can the Pill Sect do? Aren't they just waiting for death? The more we delay, the more prepared the Pill Sect will be, and the higher our chances of winning will be. Moreover, if we can't take down the Pill Sect City, I'm afraid that we will be left with an empty city." "What a joke!" Song Tiandi snorted coldly and said, "Not to mention whether their preparations are useless or not. Even if they can escape, where can they escape to?" Bai Tiandi smiled and said, "If they want to escape, there's really a place they can go. Don't forget that place." Song Tiandi was stunned as he pondered carefully. Bai Tiandi continued, "Don't forget Gu Sheng's identity. Although he is now an abandoned pawn of that sacred dynasty, he might bring people there to seek refuge. If that's the case, what's the point of everything we're doing now?" Song Tiandi's expression became more and more solemn. "Also, you said to plan slowly. It seems that you have forgotten how Yuelun failed. It failed because of pride and arrogance. At that time, Tianyuan had helpers. Who dares to help the Pill Sect now?" Song Tiandi retorted. "Ha!" Bai Tiandi laughed and said, "Is there really no one? Don't forget that a newly promoted rank 6 empire under your jurisdiction." Song Tiandi rubbed his chin with his right hand and remained silent. "I still insist on my suggestion. Let's directly attack the Alchemy Sect City to prevent any unexpected events from happening." Blue Sky Emperor finally made up his mind. He slapped the table and said, "White Sky Emperor is right. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, we will depart tomorrow and head to Alchemy Sect City." Yes. The hearts of the two armies were finally united, and the generals began to prepare for the expedition. Song Tiandi heaved a long sigh and smiled at Bai Tiandi. Indeed, there were many things to worry about in this war. Not only did they have to worry about Gu Sheng and the Alchemy Sect, but they also had to be wary of the newly ascended 6th rank empire. It was these factors that forced the two great empires to stand on the same front and attack the Alchemy Sect. Half a month later, in Tianyuan New City, after coming out of seclusion, Yi Hao stood proudly on the stage with his hands behind his back. His red eyes swept across the soldiers below the stage, and his face was filled with pride. Half a month ago, there were only about 140 Spirit Monarch cultivators in the Tianyuan Kingdom. But now, there were 2,000 Spirit Monarch cultivators standing in the square below the stage. Among them, there were 500 low-level Spirit Monarchs, 300 mid-level Spirit Monarchs, and 200 high-level Spirit Monarchs. Above these Spirit Monarchs, there were a few figures standing. They were Monk Jingguang, the Lin family's ancestor, and Hu Sanyang. There was no need to mention Monk Jingguang. After Hu Sanyang ate the pill that Yi Hao gave her, she broke through to the 3rd Order Spirit Monarch. Now, when everyone saw her, they had to respectfully address her as Heavenly Emperor Hu. As for the Lin family's ancestor, naturally, he ate Yi Hao's pill. However, the pill he ate was a 6th-level lower-grade pill concocted by Yi Hao. Although it was not as overbearing as Hu Sanyang's pill, the Lin family's ancestor had been in the Spirit Emperor realm for many years. With his accumulation, he broke through to the 2nd level of the Spirit Emperor realm and was called Lin Tiandi. 4 Spirit Monarchs, 2,000 Spirit Monarchs, and tens of thousands of Spirit Emperors. This was the current foundation of the Tianyuan Empire. Yi Hao believed that after this battle, the Tianyuan Empire would truly shine in the ancient demon domain. No one would dare to underestimate the Tianyuan Empire anymore. At this moment, a white light flew from the distance and quietly floated in front of Yi Hao. Everyone looked at the familiar white light with eager eyes and surging hearts. Wong, the white light disappeared, leaving behind a scroll. The scroll opened automatically, and an old and dignified voice sounded. From today onwards, the Tianyuan Empire will be promoted from a 5th-order empire to a 6th-order empire. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for completing the 6th-order empire mission. The reward is a 7th-order spiritual grass, a piece of burning soul wood, and a chance to summon a general. Would you like to use it? Yes. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully summoning the Three Kingdoms General Zhou. His strength is 2nd-order spirit monarch. The Three Kingdoms General? Yi Hao muttered to himself. Interesting, Lin family's ancestor. Listen up. Your subject is here. The young Lin family's ancestor bowed below the stage. Right now, the allied forces of the two empires must have entered the Pill Sect's territory. I order you and Zhou to rush there first and scout out the military situation. I will bring the army behind the two of you and keep in contact at all times. Yes. The Lin family's ancestor did not dare to object. Furthermore, he was now in existence of the spirit monarch. He could do whatever he wanted in the ancient demon realm. So what if he went to the Pill Sect? If it wasn't for the two heavenly emperors personally taking action, no one would be able to keep them here. However, there was a question. Who is Zhou? Why had he never heard of him? Yi Hao looked at the Lin family's ancestor's puzzled expression and said with a smile, Zhou, come out and greet everyone. With that, a middle-aged man holding a crescent blade appeared behind Yi Hao. The Lin family's ancestor glanced at him. 2nd-order spirit monarch, so he did not dare to be careless and hurriedly greeted him. Zhou nodded, and the two of them met face to face. Yi Hao said in a clear voice, Zhou has been sent out by me to carry out missions. Now that he is back, he will go to the Pill Sect with you. We can take care of each other along the way. Yes. Then, the two of them turned into two streaks of light and headed straight for the Pill Sect. At this time, Yu Shu and Yu Sheng stood up and said in a deep voice, Your Majesty, please bring the two of us with you on this expedition. Yi Hao casually glanced at them and said, The two of you don't have the strength of a spirit monarch. What are you going for? Yu Shu had a look of dissatisfaction on her face. Just as she was about to speak, she was stopped by Yu Sheng. Yu Sheng said in a deep voice, Your Majesty, although our cultivation is inferior, the two of us are both grade 5 alchemists. When the war comes, the two of us will definitely not be able to help. Yi Hao looked at the sincere woman below the stage and said with a smile, Since that's the case, the two of you can follow. Thank you, Your Majesty. As the army set off, a white figure suddenly appeared beside Yi Hao. Chapter 1591. Yi Hao looked at the departing army and said to the white figure beside him, I'll leave Tianyuan City to you. I know. Don't worry about it. The scholarly man yawned lazily and smiled. With a saint ruler like me here, who would dare to cause trouble for Tianyuan? Let's go. Yi Hao smiled. A small dog climbed onto his shoulder. 2,000 cultivators from Tianyuan Empire rushed to Pill Sect Empire as fast as they could. Qingshan Empire, Yuan Manor. Yuan Mu was lying on a wrought-tan chair in the courtyard, thinking quietly. Suddenly, a black figure came before him and reported, Yi Hao has safely come out of the Star Moon Emperor's tomb. He's now leading the people from Tianyuan to the alchemy sect. What should we do next? Yuan Mu smiled. Go home. Huh? Fang Yu couldn't believe his ears. Go home? We can finally go back. That's right. If nothing unexpected happens, Yi Hao will definitely set foot in the desolate world. There's no point in us staying here. Plus, the situation there isn't good. We have to go back. Fang Yu couldn't hide his joy, but if we want to go to the desolate world, we have to get the approval of the other sacred dynasties. Can Yi Hao do it? Yuan Mu smiled. When he first established Tianyuan Empire, who would have thought that it would become one of the overlords of this world under his leadership? I believe he can do it. All right, go and prepare. We have guests. Yes. Then, a short yellow figure walked out. Yuanmu looked at the figure and asked, "What are you doing here?" Huang Yi smiled and lay on the rattan chair beside Yuanmu. "You should be going back to the desolate world." "So what if I am?" "Then I'm relieved." "What do you mean?" Huang Yi said slowly. "The princess hasn't been eating or drinking since she returned. She even rejected the wedding that His Majesty pushed to her. Thus, the higher-ups sent word that I have to bring Yi Hao's head back." Bang! A corner of the rattan chair was crushed by Yuanmu. He said coldly, "You dare?" "Ha ha!" Huang Yi could not help but laugh. "Enough, we are all going back. Why do you care about this? If you dare to personally make a move, I'll definitely kill you once we reach the desolate ancient world." "Oomph." Huang Yi snorted and said, "Is this Yi Hao that important to you?" "That's right." Yuanmu stood up with his hands behind his back and said, "I, Yuanmu, am a man of my words. If you dare to personally take action, then the desolate world will be your burial ground." Huang Yi also stood up and retorted, "Even if I don't do anything, are you so sure that he won't die?" "Huh!" Yuanmu chuckled. "You're just a few sacred dynasties. You're still far from being able to take Yi Hao's life. Let's wait and see." Yellow Cloak brushed past Yuanmu and said, "I can promise you that I won't do anything, but he might not be able to beat those sacred dynasties." Yuanmu looked at the blurry yellow figure with a pale face. At this time, Fang had already packed his luggage and came to Yuanmu's side. He asked, "Everything is ready. Our people have already been sent back to the desolate ancient world in batches. Should we go too?" Yuanmu did not speak. He quietly walked out of the courtyard with Fang Yu following behind him. After the two walked out of the Yuan manor, Yuanmu turned around and waved his hand calmly. Suddenly, the entire Yuan manor was set ablaze. Not long after, the Yuan manor was reduced to ashes. The Yuan manor's patriarch, Yuanmu, also died in the fire. 10 days later, Pill Sect Empire, Pill Sect City. Old Man Gu and Jin Sheng stood on top of the city wall, looking at the billowing smoke not far away. They had received news that the two empires' allied forces were less than 10 miles away. They would soon arrive at the city. The situation did not develop as they had expected. They had originally thought that the two empires' allied forces would slowly advance, but unexpectedly, they went straight for the Pill Sect City. Although they had gathered the entire Pill Sect Empire's forces in the Pill Sect City, there were only 12,000 Spirit Emperors. Compared to the 30,000 Spirit Emperors on the other side, there was a huge difference. In terms of high-level combat strength, the other side had 2 6th-order Spirit Heavenly Emperors overseeing them. On their side, Gu Mo had recently broken through to the 4th-order Spirit Heavenly Emperor with the help of medicinal pills, and then there were 3 newly promoted 1st-order Spirit Heavenly Emperor. This was the battle strength of all the Spirit Emperors they had. There was no way they could compare to the two empires. "Old Man Gu, what should we do now?" Jin Sheng's face was pale, and his body was weak. This was caused by refining pills for many days without rest. Old Man Gu's situation was slightly better, but not by much. He placed his hands on the city wall and said, "Don't panic. Let the 4 Spirit Emperors guard the 4 city gates first. When the enemy arrives, activate the nation protecting Grand Formation. In any case, it will last for a while." "All right, the enemy hasn't arrived yet. You can rest for a while and recover your strength. I'll go see if there's anything else that needs to be perfected." "All right." After saying this word weakly, Jin Sheng fainted. Following that, a Spirit Emperor cultivator immediately took Jin Sheng away. Following that, Gu Mo accompanied Old Man Gu to patrol every corner of the city wall. On one hand, it was to boost their morale, and on the other hand, it was to see if there was anything that needed to be repaired in the nation protecting Grand Formation. 10 hours later, the rumbling sound of horse hooves could be heard. Everyone on the city wall felt the earth shake, and when they got up to take a look, they saw 30,000 Spirit Emperor cultivators arranged into 2 huge phalanxes and lined up under the east gate of the Pill Sect City. On the left was a phalanx of about 15,000 people. They wore white armor rode silver horses, and held high-grade spirit artifacts in their hands. On the right was a phalanx of 15,000 people. They wore bright yellow armor, rode on red-yellow horses, and also held high-grade spirit artifacts in their hands. Behind these two phalanxes, there were dozens of catapults made of high-grade spirit artifacts. Those were siege weapons. It was just that the catapults moved too slowly. Otherwise, with their speed, they would have already arrived at the city gates. At the front of the two phalanxes, there was a figure. They were the emperors of the two empires, by Tiandi and Song Tiandi. Quick, go and inform Old Man Gu. The enemy has gathered at the east gate and is about to attack. After the initial panic, the soldiers on the city wall regained their composure. They hurriedly sent people to invite Old Man Gu and transferred more than half of the troops from the other city gates over. Right now, there were already 10,000 people on the east city wall. Chapter 1592. Since the enemy wanted to focus all their efforts on the city gate, then they would concentrate their forces to guard the east gate. Soon, Old Gu arrived at the eastern city wall. Looking at the dense crowd below the city, he said with a solemn expression, "Quick, activate the Great Nation Protection Array." As soon as his voice fell, four ferocious beast phantoms appeared above the city walls on all sides. Then, an invisible light barrier enveloped the entire Pill Sect city. This Great Nation Protection Array was mainly set up with the blood essence of the four ferocious beasts and spirit stones. If one didn't have the strength of a high-level Spirit Heaven Emperor, it would be difficult to break it. Below the city, Bai Tiandi and Song Tiandi rode their horses to a place and carefully observed the circulating Great Nation Protection Array. Bai Tiandi looked at the ferocious beast phantom above the city wall and said with a smile, "I've long heard that the defense of the Pill Sect Empire's Great Nation Protection Array is outstanding. Song Tiandi, why don't you let your four monsters give it a try?" "All right, I also want to see the Great Nation Protection Array of the Ancient Demon Realm." Song Tiandi shouted in a low voice, "Where are the four monsters of the Heavenly Emperor? Break the array for me." As soon as his voice fell, the auras of four First-Order Spirit Heaven Emperors soared into the sky. Immediately after, four masked cultivators appeared in the air and released their spirit energy, attacking the Great Nation Protection Array of the Pill Sect. The moment the four monsters of the Heavenly Emperor appeared, there was a burst of exclamations on the city wall of the Pill Sect Empire. "What's that? It seems to be four Spirit Heaven Emperors. It can't be. The foundation of this song, or empire, is too strong. They can casually send out four Spirit Heaven Emperors." The appearance of the four Spirit Heaven Emperors was a heavy blow to the morale of the Pill Sect Empire. All the attacks of the four monsters of the Heavenly Emperor landed on the light barrier of the Pill Sect Empire's Great Nation Protection Array. Unfortunately, although the attacks were powerful, they couldn't penetrate the light barrier or break the array. Old Gu took this opportunity to say, "Everyone, don't worry. The other party has Spirit Heaven Emperors, but so do we. Moreover, we have the Great Nation Protection Array. If it wasn't for the full-strength attack of a high-level Spirit Heaven Emperor, it wouldn't be broken at all. We just need to wait for reinforcements." "Is that so? This array is indeed powerful. Let's listen to Old Gu." "That's right. When the reinforcements arrive, we'll open the city gates and kill the two empires together." Everyone's morale was boosted by Old Gu's words. The Pill Sect's sect master, Jin Sheng, had just received the news and rushed over. When he heard Elder Gu's words, he smiled bitterly and mocked himself. Reinforcements? Who would come to his rescue in such a situation? After all, our opponents are the allied forces of two great sixth-rank empires. Outside the city, Heavenly Emperor's four freaks saw that their attacks were useless, so they attacked together. The two second-order Spirit Heavenly Emperor attacks were blocked by the Great Nation Protection Array. The four of them were a little angry, so the four of them used their ultimate combined attack. An attack that was filled with the power of the third order of the Spirit Heavenly Emperor roared out, but it was useless. Although the attack did not break the formation, everyone on the city wall knew the terrifying strength of the four monsters of the Sky Emperor. Although the four of them were First Order Spirit Heavenly Emperor, when they combined, they became two Second Order Spirit Heavenly Emperor. If the four of them combined, they would be Third Order Spirit Heavenly Emperor. With such terrifying strength, if he were to fight with others, he would definitely be able to cause a lot of damage. The four monsters of the Sky Emperor returned without success, and Heaven Emperor Tsang didn't say anything. Bai Tiandi laughed and said, "This great nation protection array is indeed powerful. Even a Third Order Spirit Heavenly Emperor's attack can't do anything to it." "What do you think, Bai Tiandi?" Heaven Emperor Tsang asked with a smile. "It seems that the two of us can only take action ourselves." "Us? There's no need for that." Heaven Emperor Tsang's tone was mixed with a trace of disdain as he said, "Although the defensive power of this Pill Sect Empire's Great Nation Protection Array is astonishing, if the spiritual energy in the Spirit Stones is used up, this array will break by itself. At that time, we can just send people to kill their way up the city wall and seize the Pill Sect city. Wait for the Spirit Stones to be used up? Then I'm afraid it will be too late." Bai Tiandi's eyes turned cold as he said, "Heaven Emperor Tsang, don't forget that Ling Juanian Xingshan Empire has also advanced to the 6th rank. Moreover, I received news that Gu Sheng has been a Qingshan Empire before. Moreover, Gu Sheng and the old Emperor of Qingshan Empire are old friends. Aren't you afraid? Don't say anymore. It's just a mere Great Nation Protection Array. Just break it." After saying that, the aura of a 6th Order Spirit Heavenly Emperor suddenly bloomed. Then his entire body floated in midair. Bai Tiandi laughed loudly and also floated in midair. Another wave of exclamations came from the city wall. "It's over. The two Heavenly Emperors have made their move. These two are both 6th Order Spirit Heavenly Emperors. I'm afraid this Great Nation Protection Array won't be able to hold on for long. If the Great Nation Protection Array is broken, doesn't that mean we have nothing to rely on?" Everyone panicked. Old Gu's expression was also solemn. He didn't expect these two Heavenly Emperors to be so impatient. The real battle hadn't even begun yet, and the two of them were already brazenly attacking. At this time, Jin Sheng came to Old Gu's side and asked in confusion, "Logically speaking, these two wouldn't make a move so easily. Could it be that there's some reason that forced them to make a move in advance to end the battle as soon as possible? No matter what, inform the soldiers to prepare for the formation to be broken." And Jin Sheng nodded and said, "That's the only way." The two Heavenly Emperors were indeed the people with the highest cultivation bases in their respective empires. The moment they made their move, it was earth-shattering. They were much stronger than the four monsters of the Heavenly Emperors just now. A Tsang Mountain appeared behind Tsang Tiandi. Then, Tsang Tiandi used the Tsang Mountain as his palm and transformed it into a Tsang Mountain seal that directly smashed onto the Great Nation Protection Array. Bang! After a loud bang, the entire Alchemy Sect city shook violently. Everyone on the city wall looked at the Great Nation Protection Array worriedly. Fortunately, there were no signs of the array being broken. Just as everyone was about to cheer, Bai Tiandi's attack whistled over again. It was a white eagle with extremely slender claws. The white eagle let out a sorrowful cry and plunged its head into the Great Nation Protection Array. The entire Alchemy Sect city shook violently again, but the Great Nation Protection Array remained intact. Cheers rang out in the city, while the people outside the city had solemn expressions. The two Heavenly Emperors didn't give up just like that. Although they couldn't directly break this Great Nation Protection Array, they could afford to waste their energy. Although the defense of the Great Nation Protection Array was astonishing, it ultimately relied on the Spirit Stones in the spiritual array to maintain its operation. Every time it defended, it would consume a lot of spiritual energy. The higher the level of the attack, the more spiritual energy it would consume. If the attacks of the two Heavenly Emperors came a few more times, the Great Nation Protection Array wouldn't be able to hold on anymore. Of course, if the spiritual energy in the array was exhausted, it could also replenish the Spirit Stones in time. It was just that during the time when the spirit stones were replenished, the Great Nation Protection Array would disappear. At that time, under the orders of the two heavenly emperors, 30,000 spirit emperors would rush up to the city wall together. Would the alchemy sect have the time to replenish the spirit stones? Even if there was, the enemy would have already occupied the city wall. The Great Nation Protection Array would collapse on its own. Chapter 1593. The attacks of the two celestial emperors became fiercer and fiercer each time. The light of the Nation Protection Array also became weaker and weaker. Everyone's initial cheers slowly quieted down. They knew that the Nation Protection Array would soon be broken. Elder Gu didn't have the leisure to stand on the city wall and watch the two celestial emperors work together to break the array. Instead, he took out array diagrams and distributed them, letting everyone set up the spirit array. When the array was broken, it would be a difficult siege battle. If they didn't make sufficient preparations, how could they wait for reinforcements to arrive? That's right. Elder Gu firmly believed that there would definitely be reinforcements. The attacks outside the city were swift and fierce, but the attacks inside the city were orderly. Crack! Suddenly, a cracking sound came from midair. Everyone looked up and saw that the originally intact Nation Protection Array was now full of cracks. Everyone, do what you're doing and prepare to face the enemy. Yes. Elder Gu's soft shout pulled everyone back to reality. Song Tiandi looked at the cracked Nation Protection Array and laughed heartily. A sea surrounded him. He clenched his fists and punched out. The sea was like a long sword that shot straight towards the Nation Protection Array. Song Si, break, boom. Song Tiandi's full-strength attack caused the Nation Protection Array to tremble. Bai Tiandi's eyes were cold. Light snow suddenly fell around him. Just as the snowflakes fell to the ground, the snowflakes around him suddenly froze and then turned into small icicles. Then, countless icicles appeared beside him. Bai Tiandi pointed with his finger, and those icicles rushed out and collided with the crumbling Nation Protection Array one after another. Explosions sounded. Boom! The Nation Protection Array shattered with a bang. Without the Nation Protection Array, the cultivators of the Pill sect felt no sense of security in their hearts. This was because they were about to face countless attacks. The two celestial emperors sat calmly on their horses and waved their hands. Two square formations each had 5,000 spirit emperor cultivators with spirit artifacts in their hands as they flew towards the city wall. Countless lights lit up on the city wall. Those were the lights emitted by the activation of the spirit array. A ninth stage spirit emperor cultivator led hundreds of people behind him and directly jumped onto the city wall. But just as he stood firm, dozens of spears pierced towards him. Even though his cultivation base was high, he couldn't withstand the siege of dozens of cultivators of the same realm. The ninth-level spirit monarch realm cultivator roared and rushed forward 2 steps. At this time, 2 empty spaces appeared behind him. These 2 spaces were just enough to accommodate 2 people. Therefore, 2 cultivators of the 8th-level spirit monarch realm stood behind him. As these people, the Pill sect cultivators were forced to retreat. The cultivators of the Pill sect empire. Similar scenes were playing out all over the city walls. The 2 sides were in a deadlock. The occupying side would always be driven away by the defending side as soon as they occupied an empty space. Inside the Pill sect empire, a team of 2,000 people was advancing rapidly. Suddenly, a scout ran to the leader of this team. The scout looked at the young man in black and said, "Your Majesty, something bad has happened. The Pill sect city's great protective array has been broken." The young man looked serious and asked, "The heavenly emperors of the 2 empires have personally taken action?" "Yes, I know." The young man waved his hand, and the scout left. Suddenly, the young man shouted, "Golden light, Sanyang." "Yes, Your Majesty." A woman and a monk flashing with golden light walked over. The young man ordered, The pill-sect city's great protective array has been broken. My master is in trouble. I will go first. You bring the army and hurry over. Yes. Husanyang cupped her hands, and Golden Light Monk nodded. Then, Yihao led the army and rushed for 10 days straight to the biggest city of the pill-sect empire. Less than 10 miles away from the pill-sect city, there were 3 figures, 1 woman and 2 men. The man on the left was skinnier, the man on the right was more muscular, and the woman in the middle was tall and had a cold expression. Your Majesty, we are less than 10 miles away from the pill-sect city. I heard that the pill-sect city's great protective array has been broken. Do you need me to bring some troops over? The 2 men asked at the same time. The woman in the middle shook her head and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She patted her golden dress and said clearly, no need. Just speed up and get there as soon as possible. The pill-sect can't be destroyed in such a short time. Yes. The 2 men accepted the order and left. The peerless woman was still standing in the same place. She seemed to be talking to herself. Forget about the last time. The war is about to start. Don't come out and cause trouble for me. After 2 hours, the 2 empires' allied army threw over 2,000 corpses under the city wall and returned to the square formation. However, they stood at the back of the square formation to recuperate. More than 2,000 people died on the allied army's side. As the defender of the city, the pill-sect didn't have it easy either. More than 1,900 people died, leaving only 8,000 people to defend the city. When Old Goose saw this number of casualties, his eyelids couldn't help but twitch. It had only been 2 hours, but more than 4,000 people had died. Then, he looked at the catapults that were slowly being pushed out from the city wall. He was furious. He only hated that he wasn't strong enough. Otherwise, he would have killed his way down the city wall. A voice came from below the city wall. Gu Sheng, Jin Sheng, I advise you not to resist stubbornly. Surrender. This way, the casualties can be reduced. Seeing that there was no response from the city wall, Bai Tiandi continued, I swear to you in the name of the Emperor of the White God Empire, as long as you surrender, everything you have done in the past will be forgotten. Not only will you not have to die, but you will also enjoy endless glory and wealth. Song Tiandi also echoed, that's right. Do you want to stay in that city and wait for death, or come down and share the riches with us? Think carefully. After hearing the words of the 2 celestial emperors, many people on the city wall wavered. Guemo suddenly stood up and said coldly, You guys believe this nonsense? Have you forgotten how these 2 great empires started? Hearing this, everyone's faces turned cold. The history of these 2 empires wasn't glorious. Many years ago, they used the same method to deceive the royal families of many small empires. In the end, the women of those royal families were snatched away by the various nobles and turned into playthings. The men were either given as slaves or directly buried alive. At that time, Guemo was also one of the victims, but he was relatively lucky. It was Old Gu who pulled him back from the gates of hell, saving him from the vicious hands of the Tsang Empire. The scene from 20 years ago was still vivid in his mind. He would rather die in battle than live on his knees. In Chapter 1594, Guemo stood on the city wall and said coldly, If you don't want to die and let your wives and daughters become playthings for this group of people, then fight to the death with me. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. Bursts of cheers came from the city wall. The hot blood in everyone's hearts had been stimulated by Guemo. Everyone was greedy for life and afraid of death, but it depended on how they lived. If their wives and daughters were humiliated and their children and grandchildren became slaves, then this kind of living was absolutely unacceptable. Bai Tiandi looked at the figures on the city wall with a cold expression. He waved his hand and said, Since you don't know what's good for you, then I will send you on your way. Release. Suddenly, dozens of flaming iron balls made of meteorite iron were driven by the catapults and smashed straight toward the city wall that no longer had the Empire protection array. Bang! 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 Rumbling sounds rang out as flames splashed everywhere. Many people were directly smashed into a pile of meat paste by the meteorite iron balls that weighed tens of thousands of kilograms. The city wall that hadn't been damaged in 100 years couldn't withstand the bombardment of the meteorite iron balls and was instantly riddled with holes. In an instant, another 100 people were added to the casualty list of the Pill sect. Many defensive spirit arrays set up by the ancient organizations couldn't withstand the attack of the meteorite iron balls and shattered with a bang. Everyone looked at the meteorite iron balls that were like meteorites from outer space. Their expressions were horrified as they frantically retreated. At this moment, Guo came to Old Gu's side and said, "Old Gu, although the meteorite iron balls aren't accurate, they are extremely lethal. The city wall is already on the verge of collapse. Let's retreat a little." Old Gu's eyes were red as he looked at the soldiers who were frantically fleeing under the attack of the meteorite iron balls. He sobbed and said, "All soldiers retreat." After receiving the order, everyone fled from the city wall like the wind. In the end, the alliance army of the two empires broke through the city gate at the cost of more than 2,000 casualties. The 5,000 vanguard troops led the way in front. The two empires led the rest and followed behind. In the end, 1,000 people were left to guard the catapults. 5,000 people surrounded the various city gates, not allowing the people of the Pill sect empire to escape. Everyone entered the city. The streets were deserted. Looking at this situation that he had long expected, Song Tiandi didn't mind. He said softly, "Let these 5,000 people pave the way. We will kill our way to the Pill sect prefecture." "All right, let's do that." Following which, under the instructions of the two great celestial emperors, the 5,000 pioneers began to speed through the empty streets. Who would have thought that when the 5,000 vanguards were halfway through their journey, a sudden change occurred. One spirit array after another quickly formed under their feet, and then thousands of cultivators from the Pill sect came out of nowhere. After an hour of intense fighting, the Pill sect had wiped out the 5,000 vanguards at the cost of over 1,000 casualties. After all, the people of the Pill sect empire had the assistance of a spirit array, so it was relatively easy for them to kill their enemies. By the time the two great sky emperors led the remaining people over, their faces were ashen. Blue Sky Emperor said angrily, "What a great Pill sect empire. Is this a street battle with us? But I don't want to give you that chance. Where are the 4 freaks of the Celestial Emperor? Kill them. Fengsheng, Yulong, you guys go as well." Bai Tiandi was no longer courteous and directly sent out 2 Spirit Heaven Emperors, one at the first stage and the other at the second stage. Hearing that, the 6 Spirit Heaven Emperors soared into the sky and bombarded the surrounding buildings. Just like that, they rushed towards the Pill sect manor. Just as the 6 of them appeared, 3 Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators from the Pill sect empire also appeared. Guo fought against the 4 freaks of the Celestial Emperor by himself, while the other 2 clashed with the cultivators of the White God Empire. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the cultivators of the Pill sect who were hiding in the buildings hurriedly left. Everyone gathered at the Pill sect manor in the center of the city. At this moment, in the great hall of the Pill sect manor, Jin Sheng and Old Gu were looking at the current situation with worried frowns. Currently, the Empire Alliance army had suffered over 7,000 casualties, and they had also suffered 5,000 casualties. Moreover, the Empire Alliance army had already sent out Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators. Although they had them, they were still inferior to the other party. Old Goose sighed slightly and came to the courtyard. He stood in the center of a huge spirit array that had been set up long ago. Jin Sheng followed him out and was suddenly shocked. He said, "Old Gu, are you crazy? You can't be thinking of using the spirit gathering array, right? The opponents this time are 2 6th Order Spirit Heaven Emperor. Even if you gather spirit, it's useless." Old Gu slowly squatted down and smiled bitterly. "Is there any other way?" Jin Sheng was silent. "That's right." The corner of Old Gu's mouth rose as he laughed. "There's no other way. We can only fight to the death. Spirit gathering array rise?" Just as he finished speaking, silver light appeared in all directions and wrapped around Old Goo's body. Following that, Old Goo's cultivation level increased greatly, and very quickly he reached the first stage of the Spirit Heaven Emperor. Jin Sheng sat powerlessly on the ground and shouted, "Old Goo, stop! You will die like this." "So what if I die? I should have died many years ago. Spirit Gathering Array, rise for me." Old Goo used the last of his strength to roar out those words. His aura suddenly soared to the 7th Order Spirit Heaven Emperor. Old Goo felt his arms that were filled with power, looked straight ahead, and laughed. "Huh, a 7th Order Spirit Heaven Emperor is already my limit. Looks like I'm already old. Old dog, second by pig, all of you die for me." Old Goo turned into a ray of light and charged straight towards the 2 heavenly emperors not far away. The 2 heavenly emperors suddenly felt a sharp aura. Their faces could not help turning grim as they rushed straight out. Very soon, 3 streams of flowing light collided together. Guo, who was fighting with the 4 heavenly emperor monsters, looked at the figure in the sky. His pupils constricted, and his desire to win became more and more urgent. In the air, the 3 rays of light separated, and the 3 people faced each other. The yellow-robed Song Tiandi looked at Old Goo, who was crazily circulating his spiritual energy, and said, "Oh, so it's a spirit gathering array." For a moment, I thought that the invincible young master Gu Sheng had descended to the world. That's right. The moment he saw Old Goo, Bai Tiandi also had an illusion, but at this moment he sneered and said, "Young Master Gu Sheng, we respect you, which is why we call you Young Master. In fact, you're already an abandoned son of the family. Why do you have to bring out the Pill Sect Empire? It's meaningless. Don't struggle." "Huh." Old Goo looked up to the sky and laughed. "Old dog, second by pig, you guys are really good. I haven't forgotten what happened back then. The 2 of us are just chess pieces. If you really have the ability, fight all the way back. I won't have the chance in this lifetime, but my disciple can help me vent my anger." "Oh, your disciple is?" "Tianyuan Empire, King Yihao." "Ha ha. That kid in the Spirit Monarch realm, you think too highly of him." The 2 of them mocked. "Laugh. Laugh as much as you want, ignorant people." Old Goo clenched his fists and circulated his spiritual energy, and 2 rays of light burst out from his eyes. Chapter 1595. Old Goo, who was already at the 7th Order Spirit Heaven Emperor realm, circulated his spiritual energy crazily, and his aura skyrocketed. He was like a god of war descending to the world. "Old dog, I have always remembered that palm strike. Today, I will return it to you." Before he finished speaking, Old Goo had already raised his palm and arrived in front of Song Tiandi. Song Tiandi looked at the seemingly powerful but shriveled palm and sneered. He raised his right palm and directly faced it. In his eyes, Old Goo was just borrowing spiritual energy to temporarily reach the 7th Order Spirit Heaven Emperor realm. Not to mention how long this method of relying on external objects to raise one's cultivation realm could last. The difference between this method and the real 7th Order Spirit Heaven Emperor realm was still huge. Bang! The 2 collided, and both of them took 2 steps back. It was actually a draw. Song Tiandi sneered and said, "Gu Sheng, give up. You can't protect the Pill Sect Empire, just like how you couldn't protect your position as the Holy Sun many years ago." "Ha ha ha." Bai Tiandi continued. "That's right. You are no longer the proud son of heaven. You're now a piece of trash. Trash should do what they should do. Goshawk art. Roar." After a low roar, a silver-white goshawk charged straight at Old Goo. Old Goo roared and slammed his fists on the ground. The phantom of an ancient beast appeared behind him. Then, the beast rushed forward angrily and tore the silver-white goshawk into pieces. It didn't slow down at all as it charged towards Old Goo. Old Dog and Bai Erju were the names of these 2 people in the past. At that time, they were just 2 guards by Old Goo's side. At that time, their relationship was still very good. At that time, they called each other friends. Until one day, These two people betrayed him and joined forces with his family to kill his mother, causing him to lose everything. By Tierney roared, "The phantom of a beast isn't a real beast after all. Break for me." With a palm forward, the phantom of the beast was directly pressed to the ground. Then with a squeeze, it shattered with a loud bang. At the same time, Song Tierney moved and punched at Old Goo. Old Goo crossed his arms and took the punch head-on before retreating frantically. This was because the other white figure had also moved. The two heavenly emperors had joined forces for the second time today. Even if Old Goo was at the 7th Order Spirit Heaven realm, he was still no match for the two of them. Old Goo was retreating. At the same time, blood kept flowing from the corner of his mouth. Boom! While Song Tierney attracted Gu Yu's attention, Bai Tiandi seized the opportunity and directly struck Gu Yu's chest with his palm. This palm made Gu Yu's already weak body even weaker. Roar! When Guillermo, who was not far away, saw this scene, his eyes turned red. He wanted to rush over to help, but unfortunately, he was entangled by the 4 Heavenly Emperor monsters and a 2nd Order Spirit Sky Emperor. As for the 2 First Order Spirit Heavenly Emperors from the Pill sect, they had both died in battle. When they left, they even brought away a First Order Spirit Heavenly Emperor cultivator from the White God Empire. The 2 Sky Emperors stopped and looked at Elder Gu with disdain. They said, "Pass down the order to massacre the city. I don't want to see anyone from the Pill sect empire again." Before he could finish his sentence, a series of anguished wails came from behind them. Turning his head to look, he saw that 2 Second Order Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators had appeared out of nowhere and were wantonly slaughtering in their formation. One of them looked like a young man, holding a sheathless sword, and the other looked like a middle-aged man, holding a crescent blade. At this time, someone in the crowd recognized the young man with the sheathless sword and couldn't help but exclaim, "Lin family's ancestor? How is this possible? Didn't he die? Why didn't he die?" Furthermore, he even became a spirit emperor. The Lin family ancestor's perception was extremely sharp, and he instantly turned his gaze towards the person who exclaimed. That person was dressed in bright yellow brocade robes, his eyes filled with fear, and there were many guards by his side. Imperial Uncle Tsang. The Lin family ancestor gritted his teeth and said, "So it's you. Perfect. Today we will settle the old grudges together." With a sword in hand, he was invincible. "Men, come quickly." The middle-aged man, who was Imperial Uncle Tsang, panicked and kept shouting in all directions. Suddenly, 2 Second Order Spirit Heavenly Emperor cultivators jumped out from the square formation. One of them blocked the path of the Lin family ancestor, and the other came behind Zhou Tsang, who was holding a crescent blade. Only then did the chaotic situation in the square formation stop. These 2 people were from the White God Heavenly Emperor's camp. Including these 2 people, there were already 5 Spirit Heavenly Emperor cultivators on the White God Empire side, and there were also 5 Spirit Heavenly Emperor cultivators on the Tsonger Empire side. To the 2 Heavenly Emperors, this was just a small interlude. However, this small interlude also reminded them that they had to end this battle quickly. This was because the Pill Sect Empire did not have so many Spirit Heavenly Emperor cultivators. If these 2 were not from the Pill Sect, then they were most likely from the Green Mountain Empire. If they were from the Green Mountain Empire, then Ling Junyan might already be on his way here with his men. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he had to settle everything here before Ling Junyan arrived. Boom, boom, one on the left and one on the right, the 2 Heavenly Emperors no longer held back. Old Gu's situation was getting worse and worse. There were many injuries on his shoulders, face, and legs. His face was pale, and his aura was getting weaker and weaker. Cough, cough. The heavily injured Old Gu laid on the ground powerlessly. Looking at the dark sky, he muttered to himself, "Is it over? Is this all about to end?" "Yes, it's about to end." Song Tierney stepped on Old Gu's chest. Old Gu's expression changed drastically. He felt as if a huge rock weighing 10,000 kilograms was placed on his chest, pressing down on him until he couldn't breathe. Bai Tiandi raised his palm. A silver-white sharp sword flickered in his palm. "Gu Sheng, I'll send you to the Western Paradise." With a loud shout, the sharp sword shot out. Just as it was about to pierce through Old Goo's body, a woman suddenly appeared in front of the two of them. That woman was beautiful and wore a golden dress. The woman waved her palm lightly, and the two heavenly emperors involuntarily retreated. At the same time, the sharp sword in by Tiandi's hand stopped 2 centimeters in front of Old Goo's chest. The woman held the sharp sword and blew lightly. The sharp sword instantly dissipated. The pupils of the 2 heavenly emperors constricted. They asked tentatively, "Ling Junyun?" The peerless woman named Ling Junyun stood in front of Old Goo. She smiled and said, "With me around, Old Goo won't die." Old Goo stood up silently and looked at the back view in front of him. His heart was filled with bitterness. In the end, he still asked, "Why did you come to save me?" Ling Tiandi tilted his head slightly and said with a smile, "From the looks of it, Old Goo, you seem to be very surprised by my appearance." Then he muttered to himself, "That's right, I was in the wrong that day. What I said was all nonsense. Old Goo, don't take it to heart. Even if you don't give face to my deceased imperial father, you still have to give face to me, the prince consort of the Qingshan Empire. You are his master, so I came." At the same time, 2 figures led more than 3,000 Ling Tiandi cultivators out of the city gate and charged straight into the formation of the 2 empires. Chapter 1596. A bugle horn also sounded in the Pill Sect Mansion. The remaining Spirit Emperor cultivators in the Pill Sect Mansion also joined the battle under the lead of a First Order Spirit Heaven Emperor. The strength of both sides was instantly equal. 2 more Third Order Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators appeared in the formation of the 2 empires. They stopped Qin Yunji and Yuing Wan, who were rampaging within the formation, because these 2 were also Third Order Spirit Heaven Emperor. Song Tiandi's expression was somewhat cold as he said, "Ling Junyun, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. You are making an enemy of our 2 empires. Have you considered the consequences? Ling Junyun, you are still young. I advise you not to do anything stupid." Bai Tiandi's tone was relatively gentle as he smiled and said, "After the Pill Sect Empire is destroyed, there will only be 3 Sixth Order empires left in the ancient demon realm. The 3 of us can form an alliance and not attack each other. Moreover, we can give you 1/3 of the spoils of war from attacking the Pill Sect. There's no need for that. You 2 have different paths." Spirit Heaven Emperor smiled and rejected the good intentions of the 2. Song Tiandi instantly flew into a rage and roared, "Ling Junyun, don't be so shameless. Your Qing Mountain is just a newly promoted 6th Order empire. How can you contend against us?" Bai Tiandi's expression was not any better. He said coldly, "Ling Junyun, you're only a 5th Order Spirit Heaven Emperor, while the 2 of us are 6th Order Spirit Heaven Emperor. You have to think carefully. Why are the 2 heavenly emperors so wishy-washy? You are even more wishy-washy than a woman like me. Are we still going to fight or not?" The golden skirt fluttered without wind, revealing the cultivation of a 5th Order Spirit Heaven Emperor. "Ling Junyun, you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Song Mountain Seal. The Qingshan Empire was originally under his jurisdiction. Now that a 6th great empire had appeared in his jurisdiction, it was a great threat to the status of the Song Empire. Therefore, Song Tiandi had always wanted to get rid of Ling Junyun. Now that there was such a good opportunity in front of him, how could he not grasp it? "Song Tiandi, you promised me that you would recruit Tian Yuan well, but I didn't expect you to turn Tian Yuan into your backyard. Since you didn't do what you promised me, I can only send you to hell." With a wave of his sleeve, a green sword appeared in his hand. A huge Song Mountain appeared in front of him. He waved his sword, and a green light appeared. The Song Mountain was shattered. With a sword in hand, he dashed toward Song Tiandi. Song Tiandi sneered and said, "Ha, little girl, you don't have much ability, but you sure talk big. Leave Bai Tiandi to me. You go and deal with Gu Sheng." He clasped his hands together, and a bell appeared. The sword and the bell collided, and the rumbling sounds continued. Bai Tiandi glanced at him indifferently and walked straight to Guillermo, who was sitting cross-legged. Before his raised palm could fall, a person who was very troublesome in his eyes appeared. When the four monsters of the Heavenly Emperor returned to the square formation to help, Guillermo, who was at the fourth stage of the Spirit Heaven Emperor, easily killed the remaining cultivator at the second stage of the Spirit Heaven Emperor. Tindi said indifferently, "Even a fourth-order Spirit Heaven Emperor wants to get involved in this mess? Get lost." The aura of a sixth-order Spirit Heaven Emperor was released, and just this pressure alone made Guillermo feel suffocated. However, his eyes were still resolute, and his feet did not move. Tindi was slightly angry and said, "I gave you face, but you don't want it." Ling Junyun was in front, and Guillermo was behind. Each of them was more arrogant than the other, not giving him any face at all. This undoubtedly made Tindi very angry. As the Emperor of the White God Empire, a stomp of his feet could shake the entire ancient demon realm. He had never met so many people who were not afraid of death like today. He raised his hand, and a white rainbow flew towards Guillermo from afar. Guillermo let out a low roar. He released all the spiritual energy in his body, forming a blue light wall, hoping to block this white rainbow. Unfortunately, his fourth-order Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivation was nothing in Tindi's eyes. He easily penetrated the light wall and pierced straight into Guillermo's heart. Guillermo's face was filled with grief and indignation. The breath that he had just recovered instantly disappeared, and his entire face turned ashen. Tindi sneered and murmured, "You overestimate yourself." With a casual flick of his left hand, Guillermo's corpse was directly thrown into the distance. He lay on the ground with his eyes wide open, and there was a fist-sized hole in his chest. "Bayerju, you've gone too far." Tindi slapped Guillermo and sent him flying. Then he kicked him in the abdomen. Looking at Guillermo, who was rolling on the ground, he said with a cold expression, "So what if I bullied you, young Master Gu Sheng? You're just a joke." Cough, cough. Guillermo stubbornly stood up and said shakily, I'm going to kill you." Ha ha. Tindi looked at Guillermo, who no longer had any spiritual energy left, and couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Kill me? How are you going to kill me? With that broken body of yours, dream on." Another slap. 2 red palm prints appeared on Guillermo's cheeks. Tindi seemed to feel a little bored. Just as he was about to kill Guillermo, a foot suddenly stepped on his back, and he was directly sent flying. Ling Tindi, who had rushed over, stood in front of Guillermo. He coldly looked at the 2 heavenly emperors who stood up from the ground and said, "I said, with me around, Guillermo won't die." Suddenly, Ling Tindi felt a sharp pain on his forehead. He couldn't help but curse in a low voice. "Damn it, you mustn't come out at this time. Good chance." Tindi, who was caught off guard by Ling Junyun, shouted in a low voice and threw a whip kick towards that peerless woman. Looking at the whip kick whistling towards him, Ling Tindi's face turned cold. He stretched out his elbow and blocked the attack. Just as he was about to take 2 steps back, a man appeared beside him. That man smiled and said, "Leave? Ling Tindi, where are you going?" With a sneer, he threw the peerless woman over his shoulder, and she also fell into the dust. Immediately after, the 2 heavenly emperors each took a step back. Countless amounts of spiritual energy circulated in their hands as they bombarded the peerless woman who was thrown to the ground. Smoke and dust billowed, blocking Guillermo's vision. Suddenly, Guillermo felt that he was grabbed by someone and his body was lifted into the air. He couldn't help but turn his head to look. When he saw that person's face clearly, he couldn't help but cry tears of joy. The 2 heavenly emperors each launched hundreds of attacks before stopping. The 2 of them stood side by side, looking at the deep pit that they had just created. The corners of their mouths curled up in smiles. Tindi stuck out his tongue and licked his dry lips. He smiled and said, "This girl is quite good-looking. Don't snatch her from me later." Tindi smiled indifferently and said, "I'm not interested in these things. I only want the private treasury of the Qingshan Empire." Deal. The 2 heavenly emperors reached a consensus and waited for the smoke and dust to dissipate. But when the smoke and dust really dissipated, the two of them were stunned, because there was no one at the bottom of this huge pit. Chapter 1597. The two of them looked at each other in confusion. With their cultivation bases, if Ling Junyun tried to escape, they would definitely be able to sense it. What was going on? At this moment, a black figure suddenly appeared behind the two of them. That figure said coldly, "You two are Tsang Tiandi and Bai Tiandi, right?" The two of them jumped in fright. Just as they turned around, they were directly pressed to the ground by two powerful palms. Bang! Bang! The ground was torn apart. The two of them had their faces tightly grasped by the palms. They could only vaguely see that person's face through the gaps between their fingertips. That person wasn't very handsome, but he had a very temperament. Moreover, there was a lazy little dog lying on his shoulder. "You two are the ones who beat my master into such a state, right?" The two of them were puzzled. Master? Also, those innocent people of the Pill Sect Empire were killed by you two, right? Ling Junyun's injuries were also caused by you too, right? You are the one who wants to turn my Tianyuan Empire into your backyard. After saying that, Yi Hao, who had rushed all the way here, raised his hands and clenched them into fists. He punched the abdomens of the two celestial emperors heavily. The expressions of the two celestial emperors changed drastically. Then, Yi Hao punched the middle-aged man on the left in a bright yellow dragon robe. In 3 breaths of time, he punched 100 times. Among these 100 punches, more than 90 punches landed on Tsang Tiandi's face. After doing all this, Yi Hao quickly got up and left. 2 figures appeared behind him. One was a woman, and the other was an old man. Just now, Ling Junyun was ambushed by Tsang Tiandi and was about to be besieged by the 2 celestial emperors. Yi Hao suddenly appeared and used the void mirror to secretly hide in the void with Ling Junyun and Elder Gu. Therefore, the 2 celestial emperors didn't notice the auras of Yi Hao and the others. Yi Hao also used the void mirror to quietly appear behind the 2 of them and gave them his most intimate greetings. Cough, cough. Bai Tiandi got up with difficulty and said, "I understand now. You are Tian Yuanyi." He was halfway through his words when he saw the Firmament Emperor's swollen face that looked like a pig's head. Every single one of Yi Hao's punches contained the spirit energy of the 4th stage of the Spirit Sky Emperor. So after these 90 punches landed, Tsang Tiandi's face naturally swelled up. Tsang Tiandi was naturally aware of his current situation. He couldn't help but be enraged at the thought of his handsome face being destroyed. However, because his lips were swollen, he couldn't hear a single word he said. Bai Tiandi patted Tsang Tiandi's shoulder helplessly and comforted him. "All right, I know what you mean. Let's teach this brat who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a good lesson." Tsang Tiandi stopped talking and nodded heavily. Yi Hao circulated his spiritual energy and said softly, "Master Junyun, you two step back and take care of yourselves." "All right, be careful." Old Gu looked at the young figure with unconcealable pride in his eyes. The reinforcements he mentioned were Yi Hao and Tianyuan. Now that Yi Hao was here, would Tianyuan be far away? Moreover, Yi Hao is already a 4th stage Spirit Sky Emperor. How could Tianyuan be weak? If Tianyuan's army arrived, the Pill Sect Empire would be able to turn defeat into victory. How could he not be happy? How could he not cry tears of joy? Ling Junyun also nodded slightly. She held her forehead that was about to split open and said, "Yi Hao, be careful." Yi Hao took a step forward and stood opposite the 2 heavenly emperors. Bai Tiandi held his abdomen and sneered. "Although I don't know what treasure you use to hide your aura, we won't make the same mistake twice." Tsang Tiandi nodded heavily. "I'm a little surprised to see you. I didn't expect you to advance to the 4th stage of the Spirit Sky Emperor in such a short time." Tsang Tiandi nodded heavily. "However, your cultivation is still insufficient in the eyes of the 2 of us." Tsang Tiandi nodded heavily. "Can you stop nodding?" Bai Tiandi rolled his eyes at Tsang Tiandi. Tsang Tiandi immediately shook his head. Bai Tiandi had a helpless look on his face. Yi Hao looked at the two of them with a smile and said, "Are you guys done talking nonsense?" The two of them were instantly enraged. This was a third-stage cultivator who was inferior to them, but didn't put them in his eyes. "If you're done talking, then please die." Spiritual energy circulated around Yi Hao's body. Under his ordinary skin, there was a faint layer of silver light. The stars and moon transformation reappeared. Not only that, but specks of starlight suddenly appeared under Yi Hao's feet. This was the second half of the stellar transposition technique, moon stepping on stars. In an instant, Yi Hao appeared behind the two of them. The two of them hurriedly rushed forward, then turned around. A Tsang mountain seal and a white rainbow blasted into the distance together. Yi Hao's right hand condensed, and a fiery red sword appeared. Spiritual energy circulated at the tip of the sword as he roared. "Sword Immortal descends, go." The first and second moves of the Sword Immortal descends appeared. Two old man phantoms appeared and slashed down, annihilating the attacks of the two celestial emperors. Song Tiandi was furious and rushed forward. Yi Hao sneered and pointed his left hand to the sky. Then, a finger suddenly appeared between heaven and earth, pressing straight towards the charging Song Tiandi. What a joke! The current Yi Hao was someone who had the complete stars and moon transformation. The power of the stars in his body was incomparably rich. He wasn't at a disadvantage even when facing a 7th-order spirit heavenly emperor, let alone a 6th-order spirit heavenly emperor. Facing the finger that appeared out of nowhere, Song Tiandi felt a sense of suffocation. He felt that if he was pressed by this finger, he would die. Hence, he kept changing his position. Unfortunately, the finger followed him closely and always hovered above his head. Song Tiandi no longer hesitated. With a roar, he released all his spiritual energy as if he wanted to compete with this finger. On the side, Bai Tianyi didn't stay idle either. When Yi Hao and Song Tiandi were fighting, he directly went behind Yi Hao and wanted to sneak attack him. Unexpectedly, just as he stretched out his palm, a red sword light flashed past. His palm was neatly cut off from his wrist. Bai Tianyi's face instantly turned pale. Before he could make his next move, the fiery red sword had already pierced straight into his chest. Bai Tianyi looked at Yi Hao, who personally pierced the Wu Dao sword into his chest, and muttered, "Impossible. This is impossible. You are only a 4th-order spirit heavenly emperor. How is this possible?" On the other side, Song Tiandi's wails and pleas for mercy spread throughout the entire Pilsec city. The huge finger easily broke through the defense that Song Tiandi had carefully prepared. Then it pressed down on his body and pinned him to the ground. No, this is impossible. This kind of strength. How is it possible? I beg you, let me go, I don't want to die yet. In the face of absolute death, Song Tiandi's pronunciation was abnormally accurate. He wasn't affected by the swelling of his lips at all. Yi Hao retracted his finger and pulled out the Wu Dao sword. The finger in midair disappeared, and Bai Tianyi was sent flying. Yi Hao used his strength to prove to everyone what it meant to be crushed. Chapter 1598. That's right, this was crushing. Before Yi Hao could make a move, the two celestial emperors were already severely injured. Song Tiandi's body, which was severely injured by the finger, was already broken, and his divine soul was shattered. Bai Tianyi, who was severely injured by the Wu Dao sword, was bleeding profusely from his chest. He couldn't stop it no matter what. At this moment, a golden figure and a woman entered the battle with 2,000 cultivators. The alliance army of the two empires, who already had no intention of fighting, collapsed even more. They directly threw away their weapons and surrendered. As for the few Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators in the square formation, they were a little restless and wanted to escape. After all, their cultivation base wasn't obtained easily. The defeat of the Empire didn't mean that they wanted to be prisoners of others. With their cultivation base, wouldn't it be better to be a happy bird in this world? Thinking of this, a 2nd-order Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivator ran away, and very quickly, His body was pierced through by an attack that contained a strong power. He died with his back facing the sky. Not far away, Yihao retracted his finger and said softly, "You can leave, but you are responsible for your own life and death." After saying that, Yihao ignored these clowns and walked to Song Tiendi, whose body had already shattered. He smiled and said, "How is it? Do you still think you are unparalleled in the world?" Song Tiendi's eyes were unfocused. His lips moved slightly as he said weakly, Let me go. Please. I beg you. I still don't want to die." Swoosh. A red light flashed, and Song Tiendi's head was separated from his body. Yihao looked indifferently at the head that rolled not far away. He said expressionlessly, "You don't want to die, but others want to die? You should have thought it through before attacking the alchemy sect, instead of begging me for mercy now." Then, Yihao moved to the next place. Bai Tianyi sat cross-legged on the ground. The blood on his chest dyed his white clothes red. He looked at Yihao, who was slowly approaching, and sneered. "You can't kill me. You can't kill me either. Otherwise, the ancient fallen holy dynasty will not let you off." "Ancient fallen holy dynasty," Yihao said indifferently. "What does it have to do with me?" After saying that, he placed the crimson Wu Dao sword on Bai Tianyi's neck. The Wu Dao sword's red light became brighter and brighter, as if it was very excited. The sneer on Bai Tianyi's face deepened. Just as Yihao was about to make a move, Bai Tianyi said coldly, "It indeed has nothing to do with you, but it has a lot to do with your master, Gusheng." Yihao hesitated for a moment. Bai Tianyi gently pushed away the Wu Dao sword that was placed on his neck. He sneered and said, "Your master Gusheng came from the ancient holy dynasty. He was originally the holy son of the ancient holy dynasty, but..." Yihao's pupils constricted because a dagger suddenly appeared in Bai Tianyi's heart just as he was about to speak. Yihao turned around and saw that it was his master. Puzzled, he asked, "Master, what are you doing?" Old man Gu smiled bitterly and said, "If you really want to know Master's story, you can just ask me. Why listen to him? That person should have died long ago." Yihao was silent. As for Bai Tianyi, his eyes widened. He wanted to speak, but he couldn't. Coincidentally, at this moment, Old Man Gu's gaze also shifted over. Their gazes met in the air. Bai Tianyi saw a trace of cunning in Old Man Gu's eyes. Then, Old Man Gu gently pushed Bai Tianyi. Bai Tianyi collapsed. When he died, his eyes were filled with deep unwillingness. He was unwilling to accept this. Yihao supported Old Man Gu and was about to leave when a black figure suddenly rushed out from the crowd. That figure was actually at the 5th level of the Spirit Heaven Emperor realm. Moreover, his speed was extremely fast as he rushed towards Old Man Gu. "Old Man Gu, be careful," the surrounding people exclaimed. Yihao was also caught off guard. By the time he reacted, the sharp blade in that person's hand had already pierced into Old Man Gu's heart. Damn it, Yihao was furious. Just as he was about to make a move, a figure attacked before him. It was a peerless woman. With a slap of her palm, that person died on the spot. Yihao didn't even have time to thank her. He held Old Man Gu in his arms and continuously transferred spiritual energy to him. Old Man Gu, whose mouth was dripping with blood, laughed. "It's useless. Don't waste your spiritual energy. If not for this attack, I wouldn't have much time left." Cough, cough. I used the spirit gathering array earlier. It exceeded the burden of my body. I didn't have much time left. No, Master, I will definitely save you." Yihao held Old Man Gu's shriveled hand tightly. He wanted to refine pills, but Old Man Gu stopped him. Yihao looked at the old man in his arms who was getting weaker and weaker. His eyes turned red and he raged. "Tsunger Empire, White God Empire, I will make you accompany my master in death." Old Man Gu patted Yihao's hand lightly and said, "You can't blame those two empires for this matter. They're just pawns of others. Is it the ancient fallen holy dynasty?" "That's right. Master, where's the ancient fallen holy dynasty?" "The ancient demon domain." "And?" Yihao didn't understand and said, "This is the ancient demon domain, but why haven't I heard of it before?" Cough, cough. Old Man Gu explained patiently. "To be precise, This place is called the Lower Ancient Demon Domain. There's also a world called the Upper Ancient Demon Domain. The strongest power in the Lower Ancient Demon Domain is the 6th grade Empire, while the Upper Ancient Demon Domain is the 3rd grade Saint Dynasty. Other than the 3rd grade Holy Dynasty, there are also the 2nd and 1st grade Holy Dynasties. Don't underestimate the power of the Holy Dynasties. Even the weakest 1st grade Holy Dynasty has a spiritual Holy King. The 2nd grade Holy Dynasty has a spiritual Holy King, and the 3rd grade Holy Dynasty has a spiritual Holy King. Song and Baishan were actually supported by the 3rd grade Holy Dynasty, the ancient fallen Holy Dynasty. If I'm not wrong, that person was sent by the ancient fallen Holy Dynasty to kill me. Yi Hao frowned and asked, "Why does the ancient fallen Holy Dynasty want to kill you?" "Haha, that's because of the past," said Old Man Gu. "Back then, I was the holy son of the ancient fallen Holy Dynasty. I was the pride of the ancient demon domain. But I was born of a concubine. I stole the limelight from the eldest son of the ancient fallen Holy Dynasty. So, the eldest son of the ancient fallen Holy Dynasty instigated by Tian Di and Song Tian Di, who were my guards, to kill my mother. After that, they destroyed my cultivation so that I could never cultivate again. At that time, I couldn't cultivate, but I wanted to avenge my mother, so I studied alchemy and formations. After my unremitting efforts, 3 years later, I had already become a 7th grade alchemist and a 7th grade alchemist. The glory of the past seemed to have returned to me. The lineage of the eldest son could no longer tolerate me and forced me to make a heavenly oath that I would never refine a 5th grade or above pill in my life. Then they expelled me from the ancient fallen Holy Dynasty. I couldn't go back to the ancient fallen Holy Dynasty for the rest of my life. Not only that, they forced me to eat an aging pill. Because of that, I became a middle-aged man. I was 30 years old. Chapter 1599. Memories of the past appeared in his mind, and Old Gu's heart was filled with hatred. Yi Hao listened to Old Gu's story quietly. He couldn't help but feel sorry for Old Gu. His mother had died. His cultivation had been crippled. His alchemy skills had been limited. Old Gu, who had nothing, had come to the ancient demon domain and started to work hard again. It hadn't been easy for him to join the alchemy sect and make it stronger. In the end, the ancient Luo Holy Dynasty had wanted to kill him. Not only had they supported 2 6th-rank empires to attack the alchemy sect, but they had also secretly sent people to kill Old Gu. The ancient Luo Holy Dynasty really deserved to die. Later, I came to the ancient demon domain and got to know the sect leader of the alchemy sect, Jin Sheng. The two of us didn't want to see the weak being bullied, so we joined the alchemy sect. The alchemy sect grew stronger under our control, and we could fulfill our promise to protect the weak. Let's make them our allies. We'll advance and retreat together, but the ancient fallen Holy Dynasty still wants to kill me. Lin Feng sighed. Thinking about this, Old Gu's face became gloomier and his qi became weaker. Yi Hao's heart was filled with grief as he asked, "Master, where exactly is the ancient demon domain? How can I go there?" Old Gu's face became cold and he reprimanded, "What do you want to do?" The ancient Luo Holy Dynasty is a 3rd-rank Holy Dynasty. They have a spiritual emperor. Aren't you courting death? Don't do anything stupid. Yi Hao said with a smile, "Master, not to mention that I want to avenge you. Do you think I can still stay out of this matter at the moment? The White God Empire and the Tsang Empire were destroyed by me. The ancient Luo Holy Dynasty will find out sooner or later. I don't know anything about my enemies. I have to know where they are." Old Gu smiled and said, "No matter what, you have to take care of yourself. Before you have enough strength, don't go to the ancient Luo Holy Dynasty. Staying alive is more important than anything." He then said, "As for where the ancient demon domain is, you'll know when the time comes. But I hope you won't find out in this lifetime." After Old Man Gu said this in an extremely weak manner, his eyes suddenly started fighting and gradually showed signs of closing. Yi Hao's expression was calm, and he did not disturb him. In his heart, he said, "Master, rest assured, your disciple will avenge all the grievances you've suffered in this life." Scenes of the past surfaced in his mind. From the very beginning, when he was apprenticed to his master in Lishan City, to standing up for him in Tianyuan City, to today's rescue in Alchemy City, they had experienced too much together. Yi Hao had long regarded Old Gu as his father. Now that Old Gu had passed away, he had to avenge him. Yi Hao gently placed Old Gu on the ground and got up. Suddenly, he felt a commotion beside him. "Spirit Heaven Emperor, what are you doing? Hurry up and stop. The war is over. There's no need to kill anymore. Spirit Heaven Emperor, stop. Why are you even killing your own people?" Yi Hao turned his head to look, only to see Ling Junyun charging into the crowd like a madman and starting a massacre. With her fifth order Spirit Sky Emperor cultivation, no one in the crowd was her match. Even the Spirit Heaven Emperor rankers did not dare to approach, and only dared to quickly retreat with their men. Yi Hao's footsteps were light, and he instantly arrived in front of Spirit Heaven Emperor, facing the palm that Spirit Heaven Emperor had just extended, and the two of them were evenly matched. Yi Hao looked at the current Spirit Heaven Emperor and felt that it was a little unfamiliar. Although it was still that peerless appearance and the same clothes, he felt that something was wrong. After observing carefully, he finally discovered something different. That's right, the color of his pupils was wrong. He clearly remembered that Ling Junyun's pupils were clearly black, so why did they turn red at this moment? Furthermore, Ling Junyun was unable to do these enchanting movements. It felt as if she was a completely different person. "Ling Junyun, the war is over. Wake up." Yi Hao tried to switch places. However, the current Spirit Heaven Emperor was indifferent. His right hand was placed on his waist as he looked at him with a smile. However, that smile made people feel cold. At that time, I felt that this little girl was not simple. I never thought that it would be like this. The little dog lying on Yi Hao's shoulder had unknowingly woken up and said with a serious expression. Yi Hao was overjoyed and asked, "Tunshin, do you know what's going on with Ling Junyun?" I also judged it from her actions. If I'm not wrong, the one occupying the little girl's body right now is another consciousness. Another consciousness. This was the first time Yi Hao had heard of such a thing, so he was a little confused. "That's right," Tunshin patiently explained. "The meaning is that there are two consciousnesses in Ling Junyun's body, and the one we saw before might be the main consciousness. The current one is the subconsciousness, and usually the personalities of these two consciousnesses are completely opposite. For example, the main consciousness is kind, and the subconsciousness is evil. Whenever the main consciousness feels weak, the subconsciousness will take the opportunity to enter and take control of the body, kicking the main consciousness off the stage. This little girl is currently in this situation. I was wondering how this little girl could improve so quickly. It is because she has two consciousnesses." Yi Hao frowned. Hearing Tunshin say this, he felt that this was a problem. He asked, "Is there a way to solve this?" "No." Tunshin's answer was very simple. "Huh. At least in the ancient demon area, there's no solution." "Then what about the ancient barren world?" Yi Hao asked. Tunshin thought carefully and said, "The ancient barren world is boundless. There's everything. Perhaps there's a way to solve this." "Then, is there any way to wake up Ling Junyun's main consciousness?" "There is no such thing." Tunshin paused and then said, "However, I do have a way to make the two consciousnesses fall into a deep sleep. This is better than letting the main consciousness fall into a deep sleep and never wake up." "Okay, then let's do that." Yi Hao made a quick decision. Tunshin was also very straightforward. He directly taught the method to Yi Hao. Then, Tunshin jumped down from Yi Hao's shoulder and ran to Hu Sanyang's shoulder. He whispered in her ear. Hu Sanyang knew that this little dog's origin was not ordinary. She immediately shouted, "Everyone, quickly retreat." Soon, everyone opened up a space for Yi Hao and Ling Junyun. Yi Hao looked at Ling Junyun, who had a sinister smile on her face, and he pointed his hands to the sky. At the same time, he chanted an incantation in his heart. Two giant palms appeared in the sky. The palms suddenly appeared in an invincible manner. Ling Junyun's fifth order heavenly emperor strength was completely powerless in front of these two palms. After Yihao restricted Ling Junyun's movements with absolute strength, he quickly swam around her. At the same time, palm imprints flew out and landed on Ling Junyun's body. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.